Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Let Us Head Fanfics, back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Had Power of Haki. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. In a dark room, a 4-year-old child watches idly from his seat as the footage played over and over again. A popular video that circulated infamously around the internet that changed the lives of many people. The debut of a certain hero that would go on to become the symbol of peace. Small tears gathering in his eyes as he watches the hero, known as All Might, save many people from a burning building while he smiles to the camera. This man was his idol and the reason he wanted to become a hero. Normally this would bring the child joy and happiness ... but not today. Because today was the day that Izuku Midoriya found out that he would never have a quirk. You may want to just quit, kid. The doctor's voice still ringing in his ear as he explained that because of a genetic property in his pinky toes he would never gain a quirk. This had crushed the boy as his dream of becoming a hero was effectively destroyed. It didn't help when the others in his kindergarten made fun of him because of it and essentially isolated the poor boy. It was that day Izuku learned that not everyone was born equal. Inko Midoriya could only watch sadly from the doorway as her child continued to watch the film over and over again. Her heart aching at the sight of her baby boy so depressed that it nearly crushed her soul too. All Might, he's really cool, isn't he? His voice, so broken and painful that it caused her heart to ache. He saves everyone with a smile, no matter how much trouble they're in. He's a really cool hero. He turned around as tears gathered at the corner of his eyes. Mum, she flinched when he spoke as he sadly pointed at the screen. Can I be a hero too? It would be at this moment where Inko would break down and cry with her son. She would have lost her will to give him courage and instead apologize for something neither of them had any control over, forcing them to develop unhealthy physical and mental habits that would not heal for years to come. However, this was not that story. Before Inko could go over to her son and apologize for the hand that fate dealt him, a small picture frame snapped off the side of the wall and smashed into the ground, surprising both mother and son. Their sadness momentarily forgotten as Inko picked up the broken picture frame and paused. In the picture was a younger version of herself, with a 1-month-old Izuku held gently in her arms. Beside her were 2 more figures, one a slightly elderly-looking woman with light green hair and a kind, gentle face similar to her own, while the other was a large, muscular-looking elder man with dark hair slowly fading to gray with a scar just under his right eye and a small beard. Both of them gathered around the small bundle as happy smiles plastered their faces. Both of them were her parents, her mother Ao and her father Ryu. She had not seen much of her parents after Izuku was born and her husband went off overseas for work. They were mostly reclusive as her mother preferred the more silent and peaceful settings while her father was the head of a dojo, who spent years practicing a martial arts form that he claimed had been forgotten. She remembered growing up noticing how her father was a strange man that could do unusual things, breaking boulders with his bare fists, and being able to dodge attacks from would-be thieves whenever they tried to mug them. Now breaking boulders wouldn't be a strange thing if he had a super strength quirk. But the strange thing was, her father was diagnosed quirkless, just like her son. Her mother was the only one that actually possessed a quirk, and that was a light form of telekinesis. He never truly explained how he could do these things because he said that she did not possess the spirit necessary to harness it. It had confused her for many years until she decided to drop the subject, but it made her start to think, if her father could do all that without a quirk, could her son? She looked back to Izuku as he still waited for a response. She smiled softly as she gestured to the boy. Izuku, go and pack your bags, she told him as he looked confused. Why? He asked as she showed him the photo. We're going to go visit your grandparents. He blinked in recognition of the 2 family members he hadn't seen since he was 3. Grandma and Grandpa. Why are we going to visit them? He asked as she smiled softly. To see if there is still a chance for you to become a hero, she said as he looked back with wide eyes as a brief flicker of hope sparked in his eyes. That day she had never seen her son move so fast to pack his bag, even trying to jam as many of his All Might toys in as possible, as he waited impatiently at the door with a slight bounce in his step. She almost chuckled as she told him to slow down. She still needed to pack her own things and book the next ticket for the train for goodness sake. By the way, he suddenly asked, where do Grandma and Grandpa live? Roughly 2.5 hours later, Mai Prefecture. Izuku stared in slight awe as he and his mother rode the train to the Mai Prefecture, his eyes wide with excitement as he had never been so far from Shizuoka in his life. For one, there were so many mountains and plants that it was a drastic change from the city dwelling of Shizuoka. For a child of 4, it was no surprise that he would be excited. Inko smiled as she was glad that her son was no longer depressed about his quirkless status. But she knew that once they reached their destination the topic would come up again, something that she had still yet to tackle with her son. Internally she was afraid of what her parents would say, more specifically what her father would say. Growing up her father was a rather blunt man to say the least. And that was putting it mildly. He always spoke his mind and never let what others think to affect or bother him. That being said, however, anyone said anything bad about her or her mother and he or she tended to walk away with more bruises than they started ... or if they were lucky to walk at all. He also never actually liked Hisashi when she started dating him, saying that he never did trust the man, especially when he missed out on the birth of his own son for a business trip in the Philippines. Her father never forgave him for that. But that wasn't to say he hated Izuku. No, far from it. He absolutely adored his grandson. The man would constantly ask for updates about his grandson, wondering if he was okay or how he was doing at school. Her mother always found it adorable, to which he would just blush and look away. They had moved to the Mai prefecture some time ago to start a dojo to teach self-defense to youngsters. But because nearly every kid in the world was born with a quirk, most of them avoided learning martial arts from a quirkless man over a quirk one because they believed there was nothing they could learn from a non-powered individual. Also, because a majority of them were even turned away by Ryu himself because he said they lacked the spirit needed. So, the dojo was not doing so well. But due to a family inheritance a while back, they were stable and got by with the occasional odd job here and there. It was a good life for them, and she hoped that they could help her son during his time of need. Still, she was afraid that he would turn him away like so many others that had come to his door. She was afraid that his blunt attitude would crush his already fragile psyche and plunge him into an eternal pit of despair from which there was no recovery. She was taking a huge gamble on the fate of her son. Izuku spoke as she turned to the boy. "Do you really think Grandpa can help me become a hero?" he asked with a slight nervousness in his voice. But the opportunity to change that ... she couldn't afford to miss it. She merely smiled sadly as she brought the boy in for a hug. "We'll see, Izuku. We'll see." After getting off the train, the mother and son got in a rent-a-car and they drove out from the station. The car soon pulled up to an old dojo-styled building, complete with a wooden overhead and stone stairs that led up to the main house. Izuku stood nervously in front of the steps as he read the sign that said Ryu Dojo. The building itself was a traditional Japanese-style dojo, shoji doors and tatami floors. He shook a little until a gentle hand from Inko gestured him to move forward. Hello," he called out before the sound of yell frightened both Midoriyas before a large boulder came flying overhead and slammed into the courtyard. They gaped slightly in shock at the large boulder with a fist imprint cracked into the surface of the boulder, Inko shaking like a leaf in the wind while Izuku could only stare at the fist in the rock, as it reminded him of his hero, All Might. "Sorry, I'm so sorry," a voice called out as they turned to see a light green-haired woman come running towards him. Her appearance was similar to Inko, bearing the fact she had small wrinkles and near light green hair. "My husband got distracted when he heard you call out, so he put too much into his fist. I'm sorry for any damages we might ... She trailed off as she looked upon the two green-haired individuals before her. A beat of silence drifted between them as all three of them stared at one another. "Ayan," the woman started before she flew to the mother. "Inko-chan, you've come home," she cried out as she latched herself on the startled woman, with large tears rushing out of her eyes. "I'm so happy to see you again. It's been almost 2 years since I've seen you. Oh, it is so good to see you again. And you brought Izuku-kun," she suddenly yelled with pure happiness as she picked up the small and completely startled child as she smothered him in her chest. "Oh, it's been so long. It's me, Grandma Ao." She held the child in her arms as Izuku was beyond confused. "Ao, what's with all the noise out there?" An older, gruffer voice spoke as mother and son turned to see a large, muscular-looking man walking towards them. He wore judo outfit with the sleeves ripped off and his hands wrapped with bandages. "Did I hit anyone with that bowel ... dare ... He too trailed off at the two greenheads. "Inko-chan." He dashed at an insane speed as he picked up the slim mother in his arms and spun her around. "Oh, my sweet Inko-chan. You finally left that deadbeat bastard of a husband and come home. Oh, and you brought Izuku-chan with you. Happy days." He then picked up the boy and started tossing him in the air. "It's me, Izuku. It's Grandparyu." He bellowed happily while throwing Izuku into the air and catching him, only to throw him back up again and repeat. Izuku-chan. Say whee. Jhhhh. Papa. Stop. I haven't left Hisashi and you're scaring Izuku. Indeed, he had scared young Izuku by throwing him high into the air, like 5 meters in the air, as the boy shook like a leaf in the wind when he landed back in his grandfather's large hands. Sorry about that." The large man chuckled nervously as Izuku clutched onto his mother for safety. "Anyway, what brings you all the way here from Shizuoka?" Inko's eyes became sad as Izuku stopped his fear quivering and he too adopted a sad look on his face. "Can we talk about this inside?" Both grandparents looked concerned but nodded as they went into the house. Shortly after, Ryu Dojo. There Inko explained what had happened, how she took Izuku to the doctor, who explained that because of 2 joints in his toe he would never have a quirk and that he should just give up on becoming a hero. Both grandparents looked shocked and saddened as they looked to the small little boy, who sat on the far away from them at the edge of the deck, with his legs pulled into his chest. I see ... That must be terrible for a child like that to hear. Does that doctor have no tact? Al asked as Inko shook her head. I don't know. I think he believed that if Izuku was told the blunt truth, he wouldn't try to pursue a dangerous career like heroing without a quirk. Makes sense from a professional standpoint, she argued, but felt bad saying it, but not from an emotional one. Ryu finished as hands tightened around his pants. Both mothers could tell he was angry. Angry that a man like that would just blatantly smash a child's dream into dust. So, if little Izuku-chan is quirkless, then why have you come all the way here? I'm not trying to be rude. We really appreciate the visit. But what are you hoping to gain from us? He asked as Inko sighed. Well, I was hoping that you could be able to teach Izuku how to do those things you do. Mama said that you were born quirkless like Izuku, but you can do all these amazing things without one. I was hoping that you might be able to do something with Izuku. The old man narrowed his eyes as he looked over to his grandson. You want me to teach him my techniques? Why, so that he could become a hero? She nodded as she wrung her hands. He sighed as he crossed his arms. I'm afraid it's not that simple. She looked fearful at that. The techniques I learned stems from a form of martial arts that has all been forgotten at this point. The martial arts I know requires a certain element that is key in mastering the power. Being related to me or not, it won't matter if he doesn't possess the fighting spirit that fuels the power. I could teach him some basic katas, but other than that, if he lacks the spirit, my techniques will do him no good to become a hero. Inko looked almost hurt as Ryu explained. But, please, he really wants to become a hero. I told him there was a chance for him. If you can't, then I'll have failed him as a mother. I'll have failed my baby boy who wants to be a hero more than anything in this world. Tears started to roll down her face as she laid her head to the floor and begged. Please, Papa, there has to be something. I can't fail him again. Ao and Ryu looked at the crying woman before them and the boy who had gotten up and left, more than likely to cry his own tears. Ryu sighed before he placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. I'll see what I can do. I can't guarantee, but I'll see if he has that spirit. She nodded with tears still in her eyes as the large man left the room. Ryu instantly found the boy as he lay curled up under a large tree that grew at the back of the yard. The small boy huddled under the massive oak that you would have almost mistaken him for a shrub because of his green hair. The man walked over to the boy who curled up tighter. He sighed before he sat down next to the boy. So, you heard all that, huh? He asked as the boy nodded. You don't think I can be a hero too, don't you? He asked with the tiniest voice. The old man sighed as he looked up at the stars. It's not that I don't believe you can be a hero, kid. It's just that being a hero isn't all about putting on a bright pair of spandex and punching people in the face. It is a dangerous profession that will more than likely get you killed, even with someone like All Might keeping the peace. Young Midoriya imagined All Might as his smiling face gave hope to people. Your mother wants me to teach you so that you can become a hero. But the technique I know is an old and ancient art. Very few people can use it. It requires a special will of fighting spirit in order to use it. If you lack that spirit, you cannot use or master it. He looked down to the boy whose hair had shadowed his eyes. Ao and Inko hiding behind the door as they watched in anticipation. And honestly right now, looking at you, I'm not sure you that even have that will. Eyes widened as Ao and Inko stared at the man in shock, while Izuku only kept his head down. You were told that you were quirkless, had your entire dream robbed from you by the hand of fate, and was basically told to give up and submit to the hopelessness of reality. Many people in your situation would do just that, give up. Give up on your dream and fantasy because you cannot become a hero. Right now you look like you've given up. A look of anger in his eyes as he glared at the still curled up child. No one would blame you. No one would even care if you do. What would be the difference of one less hero in the world? Izuku said nothing as he gripped the sleeves of his shirt. So, what are you going to do, Izuku? Are you going to give up? Or are you going to do something about it? The small child said nothing as mother and grandparents waited with bated breath. The man only sighed when he heard nothing at all and got up, fully prepared to apologize to Inko for coming all the way out here for nothing. I want. He spun back around as Izuku slowly stood up. I want ... to be. Tiny fists curled together as the boy stood before the large frame of his grandfather as his body shook. When he raised his head, Ryu actually had to take a step back at the sheer determination in his grandson's eyes. I want to be a hero. I want to be just like All Might. I don't care what others say. I don't care that the world made me quirkless. I don't even care if you can train me or not. I will become a hero, even if I have to be the first one without a quirk. Because to me a true hero is one that keeps on going with a smile on his face. He yelled with a pure determination that it shook the very core of those present. Ryu stared before a large grin began to appear on his face. So ... he does have it ... the fighting spirit I've been waiting for, to carry on my technique. Little Izuku. He stepped forward as he placed a hand on his small shoulders. You've convinced me. I will teach my techniques and you will become a hero. Small tears began to form in Izuku's eyes before they shot out at an incredible rate, almost cracking the ground around him. Inko faring no better as she too cried like her son, nearly destroying the roof with hers. The elderly parents could only smile as this was only the beginning of young Izuku's journey to becoming a hero. Next morning, deep in the forest of the Mai Prefecture, the early morning sun rose over the forest as young Izuku and his grandfather were walking deep into the forest, a bag of supplies strung over their shoulders as the man was prepared to teach the young man the secrets of his techniques. "All right, this should do," the old man said as they placed their bags down in a large open field. "Now, Izuku-chan, you are probably wondering what it is that I am about to teach you, correct?" The little boy nodded as his head was almost a blur with anticipation. Excited, huh? More rapid responses as the man chuckled. "Well, what I'm about to teach you is a power I learned from a strange old man a long time ago. You probably don't know this, but when quirks began to manifest, a lot of people began to question their own place in the working world. Now that construction and mundane tasks could be completed quicker with specific quirks." The young boy nodded. "Well, when I was young, I wanted to become a police officer, like my father was before me. Being a police officer was a huge dream of mine when I was young. But as time went on, the police began to have less of an impact on society thanks to the arrival of heroes. They're still important, but when was the last time any child said they wanted to become a police officer?" Izuku nodded. Nowadays, a lot of kids want to become heroes because of their quirks. Normal professions seem dull and mundane compared to the action-packed life of a hero. That wasn't to say they weren't unimportant and didn't contribute to society. They were just not as impressive to kids now. At the time, I didn't know what to do. If the police were no longer that essential, then what was my purpose? Our family had been law enforcers since the earliest days of Japan's history. Some even believed we descend from ancient samurais that protected the emperor. Not knowing what I should do, I attempted to search for my place in the world. At first, I thought that I wouldn't until I stumbled across this old man that taught me of a power that can rival that of a quirk. He held out his hand as Izuku could have sworn to see faint line radiating off his hands. He called this power Haki, the fighting spirit of the human soul, a power that exists in all humans, quirkless or not. Izuku stared in awe. Kai. He sounded the word as the man nodded. Like a quirk, it is a power that exists inside of everyone. But unlike a quirk, only a select few people can truly harness this power. Most are even blind to the potential that dwells inside of them until it is far too late. The key to accessing this power is no doubt, no hesitation whatsoever, he explained as the boy stared in wonder. A tree snapped behind him as Izuku looked and gasped in shock. "Gee, Grandpa, there's a bear right behind you." Indeed, there was a bear behind him, much larger than an average bear and seemed to have bits of bone growing out of its body. It's a bear with a quirk. Fun fact, nowadays even animals have been known to manifest quirks. They were an intrigue to the scientific community and had experimented on them until it was outlawed when the first highly intelligent animal spoke and shocked the world. Some of them even had high-paying jobs like a certain principal of a prestigious hero school. But the man didn't even seem to bother as he kept his back to the bear. "Now pay attention, Izuku, as I explain the power that I awoke inside of me. First off, there are two types of Haki that are prominent in combat." The bear roared as it charged at the man. "He's going to try and attack with a right swing, followed by a left swing and a bite," he said with closed eyes as the bear pounced towards him. Izuku could only watch as the elderly man dodged the attacks in perfect motions and just the way he said they would happen. "This power that I'm showing you is called Kenbenshoku Haki, or Observation Haki if you want to simplify it. It gives me the ability to sense the presence of others. How many of them are there, and even ones that are concealed from view or too far to see naturally. It also allows me to predict where my enemy is going to attack." The bear growled loudly as it grew angrier at the old man. "Awesome," Izuku muttered as the bear grew bone-like spikes from its paws and shot them at the man, who only dodged with ease while they smashed a tree to pieces. "The next type of Haki is called Busashoku Haki, or Armament Haki. This type of Haki gives me the power to block all forms of attack, similar to that of an invisible armor," he explained to his grandchild as Izuku watched with great interest. The bear roared and charged again, ready to strike him down with his claws. But the moment it made to strike, the man turned around and faced his palm towards the beast. The beast was instantly knocked backwards by an invisible force that sent the beast tumbling away before crashing into a large boulder. Izuku gaped in awe as the bear lay in the rubble of the boulder. In addition, if the armor is hard enough, it can be also used in attacking force. This is especially useful against those with intangible type bodies, as you are essential hitting them with your own spirit against theirs. I haven't tried it yet, but it may be used against those with heteromorphic type quirks. I've once heard of an individual long ago who could coat his weapons in Armament Haki, thereby increasing the strength and density of the weapon. Awesome. Think of all the possibilities of this power. It's awesome, Grandpa. You're awesome," he praised as the old man chuckled before holding up 3 fingers. Observation, Armament. These are the 2 main types of Haki. However, there is a third type of Haki that exists only in very, very few and rare people. To have this is a 1 in a million chance. The bear got back up and roared as it charged at the man, tired of being thrown around by him. "Watch careful, Izuku-chan." Ryu turned back to face the beast as it ran towards him. His eyes widened briefly for a moment before what Izuku could only describe as a powerful unseen force ring out and slam into him. The bear was suddenly slowing down as its once burning red eyes were slowly fading to white as it drew closer and closer to the old man. When it was right in front of him, it stopped and sweat profoundly before collapsing onto the floor. Izuku stared in shock and awe at the unconscious beast and the man who defeated it. "What the? Why, you beat it without raising a finger. How did you do that?" he asked as the man grinned. This is the third type of Haki, the most powerful and most difficult to control. The power to intimidate your opponent into submission. Heishoku Haki, or better known as Conqueror's Haki, very few people can wield this power. However, unlike the other 2, you can control it, but you cannot train yourself to use it. Because it is the user's own spirit, you can enhance it only by developing yourself. He told the boy as he nodded his head. "Wow, but will I ever be able to do that? That seems like something that only really strong people can wield. I, on the other hand, am not that strong. It sounds like something Kaken could do if he had this power." The old man chuckled as Izuku looked confused. "Kid, if I didn't believe you couldn't handle this type of power, I wouldn't have shown you. The fact that you are still standing after I purposely intended to knock you out as well proves that you can harness this power too." He kneeled down as he pointed to the boy's chest. "Inside of you is a great power, a strong spirit that I believe will one day harness the Conqueror's Haki and master it. It doesn't work on strong-willed people, only on the weak." His eyes widened at this as the man nodded. "You have a strong spirit, kid, one I know will help you become a hero." Izuku's eyes widened as true hope and light filled his green orbs. "However, until you've unlocked this ability, it would be best you try not to control it. Otherwise, you'd accidentally intimidate innocent people, and that wouldn't do a hero any good now, would it?" Izuku nodded as the man stood back up. But something had been bugging Izuku. "Grandpa, if you can do all this stuff, why aren't you a hero? I think you'd be an amazing hero." The man rubbed his chin as he pondered. Mostly it's because I don't want to be a hero." That shocked Izuku as he stared at the man. "It's not to say I don't want to help people. God knows I want to help them. But back in my day, heroes often did small community services or great deeds without even asking for thanks in return. Nowadays, it's all about fame and glory, getting your name out and broadcasted for the world to see. I don't want to be a part of that," he explained as he looked to the boy. Not only that, back then they only allowed people with quirks to enter their schools. They even had tests to see if you possessed the quirk factor, and because Haki doesn't have that, I would be turned away all the same. But now that the rule has been taken out, you can apply even without a quirk. Which makes me wonder ... Why do you want to be a hero, Izuku? Is it to help people, or to receive fame and glory? He expected the boy to hesitate but was surprised when he shook his head instantaneously. "It's because I want to help people, like my idol All Might. He saves so many people's lives and faces countless dangers, all with a smile on his face." He smiled to himself as he looked at his hands. "He makes people feel safe and secure whenever he's around. And that makes everyone want to be a hero." He looked up with bright eyes in admiration. "That's why I want to be a hero too, Grandpa. I want to be able to save people and make them feel safe, just like him. Just like my hero, All Might." Ryu actually stared in shock before he bellowed out laughing. No hesitation whatsoever. "Yeah, I think you'll be able to use this power, after all, Izuku." He smiled as his grandson smiled back as well. "You ready to begin?" he asked as the boy nodded. However, a grin began to form on his face as Izuku blinked in confusion. "The type of training I'll be putting you through is no laughing matter. It will take at least 10 years before you can even begin to harness the power of Haki. And my type of training will make you see red on more than one occasion." A dark aura surrounded him as a grin formed on his face. "So, once you start, there will be no going back, Izuku-chan." A massive aura spread out as Izuku began to shake. "And don't think I'll hold back because you're my grandchild. If you want to be a hero, you got to put 110% into everything. So get ready for training from hell. Izuku, I think I made a mistake," was all that Izuku could think before the man charged at him with his fist. "Here we go." GAH, 2 voices cried out as the training began. That was the day that the world would begin to shake as a new hero would rise up from the ashes of self-doubt. This would be the start of a new hero who would find himself before another great man and inherit a future as the greatest hero of all time. It had been roughly 2 years since Izuku began to train with his grandfather to master the power of Haki, a strange power that used his own fighting spirit in absence of a quirk. Since that time, the old man had put the boy through a series of trials in order to mold his body into a sturdier form. Training took more time than expected as Inko and Izuku had to return to Shizuoka, mostly due to Inko's job being difficult to leave and the fewer job opportunities that were available in Mai. Luckily, it was the holidays when they decided to visit, and he got some time off school which allowed Izuku and Inko to travel to Mai and continue his training in Haki. They also planned to have Ryu and Ao visit the young boy more often and continue his training whenever they were available, to which Inko agreed. It also allowed her to rekindle the lost time she had with her parents and allowed Izuku to be away from the local children that made fun of him for being quirkless, like Bakugo Katsuki. It was a good thing that Mitsuki was hard on the boy's arrogance, otherwise she would have decked the boy herself. Inko could be scary when she wanted to be, now that she wasn't blaming herself for her son's quirklessness. In any case, when Izuku returned home, his grandfather gave him a series of instructions in order to keep up his training, but only if he continued to do well at school academically. That was a compromise for Inko, as she did not want her son to become a delinquent. Currently, it was a school holiday and they had fully begun to train in Haki. The training was hellish, to say the least. In order for Izuku to awaken Haki, Ryu decided to put the boy through a series of situations that would make him a stronger person. They trained night and day to build his small body up and did everything they could to test his limits. They were careful not to go overboard, otherwise it would stunt his growth. Rest assured, it was all for the greater good, as day by day, the young boy was getting stronger. It turned out the boy was a very fast learner, picking up on small details that would otherwise take others longer to understand, even thinking of new ways to increase his training effectiveness. This showed that the boy was very clever and effective in putting teachings into practice. Ryu was almost too impressed with the progress his grandson was making. He still had yet to access his Haki, but he knew that it would only be a matter of time. Aside from Haki training, Ryu also started to teach him martial arts in order to properly utilize Haki when the time was right. At first, Izuku wanted to learn mostly fist-related attacks like his hero All Might, but Ryu told him that a true fight didn't rely on just his fists, but every part of his body, which was why he taught him various other martial art forms that used both his arms and legs, which also meant that he had to strengthen his arm and leg muscles by binding weights to them. The training was harsh and difficult. Any normal man would have quit or complained by this point, but not Izuku. No, little Izuku kept on going, without a hint of complaint or discomfort, all with a smile on his face as he worked himself night and day to access the power of Haki. Ryu was almost proud of the boy, if he didn't keep overworking himself. Seriously, the damn kid would even go beyond what I told him and nearly darn kill himself if left to his own devices. I swear he's going to give his mother a heart attack one of these days, the man thought to himself as he watched the boy walk around blindly with a cloth over his eyes. Today he was starting his training in an attempt to awaken the observation Haki, training him to rely on his other senses and not just his eyes. He did this by making the boy wear a blindfold over his eyes and told him to expand his other senses. Other times, like now for instance, he would chuck the occasional rock at the boy to trip him up, trying to get him to sense the rock before it hit him. Gah, it didn't work most of the time. I keep telling you, use your other sense. Stop trying to rely on your eyes. Feel everything around you. He called out as Izuku slowly got up. Hi, Grandpa. And what did I tell you? When I'm teaching you, it's sensei, not grandpa. You need to not see me as your grandfather but as your mentor. Got it? The young boy nodded as he sighed. All right, let's take a break. He opened a cooler as Izuku took off his blindfold. He held up 2 popsicles as he held one out to the boy. Figured you could use one. Izuku looked at the frozen treat before smiling and taking one in his hand. Both family members sat under a large tree as they watched the rising sun over the Mai prefecture from their view in the mountains. It was these times that Izuku felt happy, spending time with his grandfather, being told that he could become a hero and training hard to achieve that goal. It made him feel like he had a purpose in his life and not just an idle dream that could never come to pass because of his quirkless birth. But a frown soon crossed his face as he thought about the last 2 years of training. He was still nowhere near ready to access the power of observation Haki, and years off before he could even think about accessing Armament. Was it something wrong with him? Was he really as weak as Kaken said he was? A brief memory of him defending a bully shortly after he began his Haki training as he was overwhelmed by the group of boys. He thought that as soon as he started his training, he would be getting stronger instantly. But after coming home with new confidence, he tried to save a kid being bullied by Bakugo. He thought that he could take him and protect the boy. He did protect him, but it wasn't enough, and he was beaten up. What the heck was that all about? You trying to be a fighter? Get real, you'll always just be a useless Deku. Kaken's voice still ringing in his ears as he sighed and thought about how slow his progress was. Maybe Kaken's right. Maybe I am just a useless Deku. He thought sadly as he hung his head. Izuku looked over to his grandfather as they looked upon the town. I just want to let you know, I'm proud of you. The boy blinked at the almost unfamiliar word to him. Anyone I know would have dropped and complained about all the hard work I'm putting you through. Hell, even when I trained with my master, I complained about how hard it was and considered quitting when I hit a roadblock. He smiled as he looked at his grandson. But not you, you just keep going without a care in the world. Izuku listened as his heart beat a little faster. I know it's difficult not having a father around, and I'm not trying to replace him. Thought honestly, if that bastard showed his face again, I'd deck him for missing out on your childhood. He muttered the last part under his breath so Izuku couldn't hear him. But I believe every son should hear how proud a father is of his son and well ... You are my grandson, so that makes doubly proud of you. And I know you'll get through this and make it as a hero. Small tears gathered in his eyes as he turned away quickly, hoping not to show the man that he was crying. Internally, though, he was happy to hear those from someone he respected. It gave him hope that he could become a hero. The man looked as he smiled softly at the boy, already seeing how that little praise was turning the boy's somber mood around and would eventually help the young boy overcome this hurdle and unlock the power of Haki. Right, he said as he gulped down the popsicle in one gulp and stood up. Let's get back to training, he proclaimed as Izuku nodded, gulped down his in one go and stood back up. Yeah, Izuku yelled as grandfather and grandson got ready to resume their training, until they both froze and clutched their heads. GAH, brain freeze, both of them cried out, clutching their heads while rolling on the ground. A reminder to all viewers, it is not generally advised to devour frozen treats to resume training quickly, and never eat it in one gulp during a hot summer day. You will more than likely get a brain freeze. Please don't try this at home. A friendly reminder from the Common Sense Foundation. 2 weeks later. 2 weeks passed since then as we now found our wannabe hero, Izuku Midoriya, and his Haki master grandfather, Ryu, on their afternoon run around the town. His grandfather had advised that Izuku should start a regular exercise plan, where he would run in the morning and in the afternoon in order to build up his leg muscles. The boy was still young and only 6 years old, so Ryu accompanied him on the runs until he was old enough to work out on his own. This often meant that the young boy would travel around the town, getting well acquainted with the streets and directions. He even got to know a few of the residents in the town. The dojo wasn't that far, existing on the edge of town, but it was a nice change of scenery from the suburban dwelling of Shizuoka and away from the bullying back home. Izuku breathed heavily as he stopped by a construction site, sweat dripping down his face while Ryu was barely even fazed by the small jog. Come on, Izuku-chan. We've only done 3 kilometers. We've still got 2 more kilometers left before we head home, he joked to the boy while wearing a dark red tracksuit. The younger boy, wearing an All Might t-shirt and navy blue shorts, only nodded as he leaned on a pole. I know ... just give me a minute to catch my breath, he wheezed out while taking a drink from the water bottle provided by his grandpa. Easy there, kiddo, I was joking. Don't keep pushing yourself like that. It's great that you have enthusiasm, but push too hard and you'll break yourself, he lectured as the boy nodded. Hi, sensei, he said before chugging the water quickly. While he took a moment, the young boy looked around as he realized they had stopped in front of a small construction site with a sign that read, Uraraka Construction Co. There were a few men and women using heavy machinery to build metal frames, while a tall man with short light brown hair and a woman with long brown hair were talking to a man in a business suit. From what Izuku had researched about quirks, it was not uncommon for construction companies to employ people with quirks to make the job easier and more efficient. But looking at the man and the woman, who was clearly the foreman of the site, weren't appearing to use their quirks whatsoever. Whether or not they had a quirk confused the boy, as it looked like they were struggling to get the work done while having an argument with a man in a business suit. He could hear some words like taking too long, or not having the right quirk for the job before he got back in his expensive-looking car and driving away. The two sighing before heading back to work. At first, he paid it no mind until he noticed something hover just outside the construction site. Curious, he walked around at a large open lot to get a better look at what he saw, much to the confusion of his grandfather. Rounding the corner, he was met with a strange sight as a small girl, roughly the same age as him, dressed in an oversized sweater with the word super printed across the chest and green pants, as she stood around a large amount of rubble before touching each of the bits of rubble. To his amazement, the rubble begins to float as the girl gently pushes them off the ground and they floated into the air. Whoa, is that her quirk? Izuku mutters to himself as he observes the small girl touching the bits of rubble. How is she doing that? Is she making the float? No, they're not floating down, so that means they aren't affected by gravity. She must be canceling their gravity. But how is she doing that? Must have something to do with her touching them. Something on her palms. No, more than likely her fingers. Is she limited to how much weight, or can she cancel the gravity of anything she touches? Also, how does she eat if everything she touches floats? Does it require all 5 fingers and blah, blah, blah? The patented Midoriya muttering start to spill out as Ryu watches in amusement. He is just like his mother, the old man thinks as he watches his grandson analyze her quirk from a distance, which was impressive, meaning he might be closer to unlocking the observation Haki sooner than expected. Wait, where did he get that notebook? The little girl sighs, a slightly strained look on her face as she turns to an even larger piece of rubble and touching it with all 5 fingers. The rubble begins to rise high as it floats above her, her face becoming more strained as she loses focus and moves to cancel her quirk. Suddenly, he didn't know why, but Izuku had a bad feeling in his gut as he watched the girl with a strained face and her hands getting closer together. His eyes widened as he notices the large bit of rubble being pushed by a gust of wind and moves directly over her head. She pressed her fingers together and the rock glows before beginning to fall. Izuku instantly dropped his notebook as he ran at full speed to the girl. "Hey, look out," he calls out as the girl looks confused before she looked up and screamed as the rock came hurtling toward her. But just before it can hit her, he tackled her out of the way, just as the rock landed and kicked up a large dust cloud. "Izuku," Ryu called out as the yell was enough to draw the attention of the man and woman on the construction site as they rush out and widened their eyes in terror. "Ochako-chan," they yelled as the small lot was covered in dust as the adults were frozen stiff. Luckily, to their great relief, 2 coughs could be heard as the dust slowly settled and revealed young Izuku and the girl, now known as Ochako, were just out of the way of the rubble as Izuku had managed to grab her in a bridal style and moved her out of the way. That was close. "Hey, are you all right?" His first priority going to the girl in his arms as she looks up numbly at the boy. The 2 of them lock eyes as emerald green stared into hazel brown as both of them took in the other. The girl in his arms had a sort of round face that was cute, with fair skin that made the 2 blush marks on her cheeks seem more apparent than usual, while the boy that was holding her had a messy hair of dark emerald green and 4 freckles under each eye. The 2 of them stare at each other for the longest time as none other know what to say to each other and make a lasting impression, until her cheeks became round and her face became strained. Well, that's one way to make an impression. Shortly afterward, a shirtless Izuku sat on a chair on the foreman's office while Ryu cleaned the puke off his grandson's shirt in the sink, the young man shrinking slightly in his seat as the overly active father, mother and daughter continued to apologize for what happened. "I'm terribly sorry for that," the little girl begged as she bowed her head to him. "I didn't mean to overwork my quirk like that and puke on your shirt. I'm terribly sorry." "We're sorry too. We should have been paying more attention to our daughter. It's just that we can't afford a sitter at the moment and we're on a deadline to get this job down, so we had to take Ochako-chan to work. We should have realized she would be overusing her quirk and stopped it. I'm truly deeply sorry." The man equally apologized while his wife nodded beside him. It's okay, really," he managed to say as he chuckled nervously at the 2. "But still, at least let us pay you back somehow. If it wasn't for you, I would have been crushed under that rubble," little Ochako said as her father and mother nodded. Like I said, it's all right. I'm just glad that nobody got hurt, except your favorite All Might shirt," the man quipped as Ochako instantly flinched and went back to apologize. "I'm so sorry." Izuku tried to calm her down while glaring at his grandpa, who chuckled in amusement as he finished washing the puke off and handed it to the boy. "Here, I got as much of it, but it's going to stink a little until we get home," he told the boy, who nodded and put the shirt back on. "Once again, we truly sorry for what happened. We've just been busy with the company and the client that I took my eyes off her for a moment." "Sorry," Mrs. Uraraka explained as Ryu shook his head and waved his hand. "It's fine. It's totally understandable. Back when I was young, I often had to look after little Izuku's mum when her mother went out of town for business. I know what it's like to look after a kid. They can be a bit of a handful," he told them as they nodded. "By the way, I'm Ryu and this is my grandson, Izuku Midoriya. You're a very lucky young lady. If Izuku didn't predict that rock falling, you could have been seriously hurt," he said as the boy nodded and bowed. "Thank you for that, and it's very nice to meet you too. My name is." A car drove by as his voice was drowned out. "Uraraka. And this is my wife." Another car went by. "Uraraka. And this is our daughter, Ochako Uraraka. We're once again really grateful for you saving my daughter like that," he said as Izuku blushed at the praise while she nodded. "You were so cool running over to save me like that. How did you know that it was going to fall on me like that? Was it because of your quirk?" she asked with a bubbly smile while Izuku blushed at the sudden happiness and closeness of the girl in front of him and attempted to hide his face in his arms. Thank you. But I don't have a quirk," he explained as the Urarakas were shocked at this. "Really? You don't have a quirk? Then how did you get to her so fast?" Mr. Uraraka asked as Ryu grinned and pointed to himself. "I've been training him for the past 2 months now. He wants to become a hero, even though he doesn't have a quirk," he said as he affectionately rubbed his grandson's hair. "Really? But I thought you needed a quirk to be in the hero program," Mrs. Uraraka asked as Izuku started to mutter. While they recently removed that rule when the general public wanted to introduce a fairer legislation to allow more equality between the civilians with quirks and the civilians without quirks. It's because of this I want to apply at UA and become a hero like All Might. But it's apparently going to be hard as the acceptance rate into the hero course is low due to the blah, blah, blah. The Uraraka stared at the boy, lost himself to his muttering. Literally, as they could have sworn the world around him was warping with his words as the physical kanji for mutter spilled out of his mouth and floated around him. Ryu sighed as once again the Midoriya mumble struck again. Izuku ... You're doing it again. Ryu snapped him out of his trance as he apologized. You're really into heroes, huh? Aako asked as the boy blushed while trying to hide behind his arms. Ryu noticed this and grinned as a plan began to formulate in his head. Anyway, is there anything that we can do to pay you back? We don't have a lot, but we won't let a good deed go unrewarded. Mr. Uraraka asked as his wife and daughter nodded. Ryu pondered this for a moment before he slapped a fist on his palm. Oh, how about you come over for dinner tonight? All three of them yelled with eyes popping out of their skulls. That was honestly the last thing any of them expected. But we want to pay you back. Inviting us over for dinner is the opposite of that, Mr. Uraraka said while they pushed their eyeballs back in. Well, it's more of a request really. You asked how you could repay us, so I request you come over for dinner. We don't get a lot of visitors and my wife would absolutely love the company. Plus, I think it would be nice if little Izuku had someone his age to play with. He explained as he grinned at the stunned family. I insist that you come over for dinner, he said. But I insist, he added with emphasis as the two parents shakenly nodded at the intense glare. Hi, we would be honored, they said with a shaking raised hand, much to the confusion of the two children, as the man nodded. Great, here's the address. We'll see you tonight. He handed them a piece of paper before turning to Izuku. Come on Izuku, it's time we head home. If we don't tell your mother and grandma they'll be annoyed, he told the small child as he nodded and waved. Bye Mr. and Mrs. Uraraka. Bye Aako. He waved as Aako waved back. Bye-bye, she called happily out while her parents shared a strange look. Who are these people? The two adults sighed as they looked at each other. Well ... We did say we would pay them back, Mr. Uraraka said as he looked to his wife who nodded. Besides, it's just dinner. What could happen? Later that night, Ryu Dojo. All three of the Urarakas gaped at the large dojo-like building as they stood before the entrance dressed in their best clothing. A cheap bottle of sake in their hand. All they could afford, as they stared in complete awe of the building. It's huge, all three said, Aako nearly falling over at the large size of the estate. Oh, you must be the Urarakas. They turned to see a slim woman with dark green hair tied with a small ponytail on the left side. Due to the fact her son had the possibility of fulfilling his dream of being a hero, Inko never resorted to excessive eating. So, she managed to keep her slim figure thanks to that, and her mother's insistence that she keeps herself in shape. It's very nice to meet you. I'm Inko Midoriya, Izuku's mother, she greeted. Very nice to meet you, all three of them said as they were still in shock of the large dojo-like house that the family owned. The biggest they owned was a small 2-bedroom apartment with barely enough space for all three of them. It was quite a culture shock for them. Well, come on in, dinner will be ready shortly. I just have to let Izuku and Papa know that our guests are here, she told the three as she led them into the dojo home. They soon came across a training room as the sound of fighting could be heard on the other side. Inko opened the door as it was revealed to be Izuku and his grandfather as they sparred against each other. The older man swiftly throwing his fists at the child who was doing his best to block or evade his attacks. He ducked under a swing as attempted to get a few hits in himself until they were blocked by the larger man's palms that harmlessly blocked his blows. Papa, Izuku, our guests are here. Izuku became momentarily distracted as he turned to three. Hello again GAH, was all Izuku could say before his grandfather hit the side of his face. Stay focused boy, he yelled and sent him spiraling against the wall. Izuku, Aako yelped in shock as she ran to the boy. Are you okay? She asked as she stood next to the boy, who slowly raised a shaking hand with a thumbs up. Yep, totally fine. She breathed a sigh of relief before she turned and glared at the large man, who actually flinched at the glare from the small child. Why would you do that? Why would you hurt him? Are you being mean to him? What kind of grandfather are you? The little girl got angry at the man who flinched in shock. Oh, Aako-chan. Her parents called out in shock as she yelled at the man who held up his hands in defense. I am teaching Izuku-chan how to fight. It's part of his training to become a hero. I'm not being mean to him. Honest, the older man said while the little girl puffed her cheeks in annoyance at him. God Lord, she reminds me of Al whenever she gets mad. Izuku my boy, you may just have a real spitfire on your hands. A small hand grasped her shoulder as she turned to Izuku. It's all right, really. Grandpa was just teaching me how to fight. I just got distracted, that's all. I'm all right, really, he told her as she managed to calm down. Inko on the other hand smiled as she looked at the small girl that defended her son. even though he wasn't actually in any danger, as she was glad that Izuku was finally meeting some friends other than Bakugo. I like her, she's a lot better than Mitsuki's boy. Sorry Mitsuki, she thought while her parents reprimand her for yelling at an adult before looking embarrassed. As sorry I yelled at you Mr. Midoriya, I just don't like bullying, that's all, she said as the man chuckled and rubbed her head affectionately. It's alright little Uraraka, you were just looking out for Izuku, I'm happy about that. Just for the record my last name's not Midoriya, that's his last name. Mine is. Everyone, dinner's ready. Ao cut him off as everyone turned to the dining room as Ao came out of the kitchen. Dinner's ready, well let's not keep her waiting. My wife is a mean cook. I'll tell you what ... and a mean swing if we keep her waiting. The man muttered the last part as he rubbed the back of his head from all the times she whacked him with a frying pan for not coming to dinner when he became engrossed with training. They all left for the eating area. The Uraraka's mouth drooled as they looked at all the food on the table. Back at their home they usually had to buy the cheap and discounted foods when their company started getting less and less work, so sometimes it was mostly white rice and discounted meat. This looked like the higher grade meat that you'd find at the butcher's. Well, dig in, Ao said cheerfully as the Uraraka family reluctantly nodded and piled on white rice out of habit. No, I said dig in, you can't just eat white rice. Have some of the katsudon, it's little Izuku's favorite. The littlest Midoriya blushed as he buried his face with his arms. Grandma, he moaned as she waved him off. Now, eat, she said as they looked hesitant. And no we couldn't possibly. A dark aura surrounded Ao as she smiled with thin eyelids. I said ... eat, it's good for you. The Urarakas began to shake at the terrifyingly sweet smile that was plastered on the grandmother's face. I do what she says. She can be quite persuasive if you don't do what she says. Trust me I know. As if to emphasize she poked the back of his head with her fist as a large bump quickly formed. See, very persuasive. He strained. The family of three shared a concerned glance before grabbing some of the meat. That night they had never felt so full as they eat the meat they would never get to have. The family of four were almost concerned when they saw tears down their eyes but were reassured it was nothing. Time passed as the two families mingled and conversed with each other, sharing stories of their youths and embarrassingly cute things their children did, which caused Izuku and Aako to blush rapidly as laughter and merriment were in the air, which eventually led Ryu to ask the question, what were you doing with those rocks before? The small girl blushed embarrassingly as she scratched the back of her head. I was practicing my quirk. I can cancel up to 3 tons worth of weight if I'm careful, but if I use it too much or try to make myself float, I suffer nausea and vomit. She shyly spoke as Ryu chuckled. Yes, I think my grandson can attest to that. She apologized again while Izuku said it was okay. But I was also trying to help out Mama and Papa by moving the excess rubble out of the way, so long as I wasn't on the job site and no one was looking, she said as her parents nodded. Our company hasn't been doing so well recently in the past few months. Neither of mine nor my wife's quirks are best suited for the job, so we've been having a hard time getting it done on time. So that's what the guy in the business suit was getting upset for. Ryu asked as he remembered the man in the business suit getting upset with the 2 adults. Yes, he wasn't exactly happy when we had to hire some heavy lifting equipment for the job when he said he could have hired someone with a suitable quirk to do it cheaper. Ryu nodded as he looked to Aako. I'm guessing that means when she gets older, she'll start working with you. To their surprise, the two shook their heads. Really, I would have thought having someone with gravity abilities be extremely useful on a job site. Inko asked as the two parents looked to the small child as she hung her head. It would, but ever since Aako-chan was a little she dreamed of being a hero. She wanted to become a hero like her idol, 13 I think his name was. Anyway, when she found out we were struggling she said she would come work for us and abandon her dreams of becoming a hero, saying that we could sell our heavy equipment and cut costs to make it easier for us. She was so cute and determined that it made us sad that she wanted to give up her dreams. Mr. Uraraka said as he smiled softly at the small girl. You must understand as well that as parents we have to do everything in our power to help our children live their dreams. We told her that what would truly make us happy is if she lived her dream. If we couldn't do that, then we'd never be able to live with ourselves, Mrs. Uraraka said with a smile at the memory of a small girl putting on a brave face. Inko looked away, realizing had it not been for that twist of fate with the photo she would have given up and crushed any hope of her son becoming a hero. She was so determined that the only reason she agreed to continue was that she had to take us on a Hawaii vacation when she becomes a pro hero. He chuckled as the Midoriya adults chuckled as well while Izuku looked to a clearly embarrassed Aako. So, you want to be a hero to earn money for your parents? Izuku asked with a childlike innocence as Aako nodded in embarrassment. I know it's not a really good reason to become a hero, but it's what I want to do. I want to make sure Mama and Papa have a more comfortable lifestyle and never have to work again. It must sound totally lame, right? She asked as Izuku shook his head. No, I think it's an amazing reason to become a hero. he said as Aako blinked in surprise. Working so hard to help your family is a really selfless and good reason to become a hero. That is totally something a hero would do. You're so awesome, Aako-chan. He praised with sparkles in his eyes as Aako blushed and looked away. The adults chuckled at the scene while Ryu had a thoughtful look on his face. Izuku, why don't you take Aako and play with her for a while? The adults and I need to have a few words, if that's okay. He asked the parents, who looked confused but nodded. Okay, Grandpa, come on, I'll show you all my all-might toy, the little boy said excitedly as Aako followed him down the hall. Ryu then turned to the parents as he crossed his arms. I have to applaud you on your conviction to allow your child to pursue her dream. You two are very good parents, he said as they nodded in appreciation. But it must be hard balancing a child and your business, correct? The two shared a glance as they nodded. Why yes, it has been a bit hard, but it's all for her sake and that's all that really matters to us, Mr. Uraraka said while his wife nodded. Ryu and Koa now looked at each other before turning back to the two. You know, I have a few contacts from my old days that I could hit up. They owe me a few favors and they're looking for some good contractors for some small jobs around the Mai prefecture. They'll accept help from anyone that will work hard and produce good quality work. I can't guarantee that it will make you rich, but it may help to ease your burden a bit. Both Urarakas were stunned as they looked to the old man and his wife and daughter. We can't possibly accept something like that. You've already done more than we ever expected by inviting us over for dinner when we should have offered. Mr. Uraraka stuttered while his wife nodded. Why, you've already done too much for us. Why would you want to help us? Mrs. Uraraka asked as Inko gestured to the living room where Izuku and Aako were playing with his toys. My son doesn't have a lot of friends, she said as the two adults looked to the kids. When he was diagnosed as quirkless, practically all of the children at his school started to ignore him and make fun of him. Even the son of my childhood friend treats him poorly, no matter how many times Mitsuki tries to stop him. In fact, when he was diagnosed, I was ready to apologize for not being able to give him my quirk, thinking it was so wrong that I had one when he so desperately wants to become a hero. Had it not been for my father, I would have just given up. She looked up and smiled. But your daughter has been so kind to him, even though she knows he doesn't have a quirk. She treats him so much better than anyone else that it makes me so happy that he met such a kind girl. She smiled as the two parents listened intently, which is why we want to help as much as we can. We're not saying we are doing this so that she can continue being friends out of servitude, but because you two are right. As parents, we should be encouraging our children to live their dreams. So, if we can help lighten both our burdens for their sakes, then it's our responsibility to do so. Right? The two stared as they looked at the kind family. You don't have to accept if you don't want to. We just want to be able to help, that's all. Ryu chimed in as the two parents looked to each other. The older Uraraka shared a glance as they weighed the options in. They honestly couldn't believe what they were hearing, to be honest. Here was this totally weird family that had not only saved their daughter from being hurt but had been kind enough to share their food and offer them help to keep their business afloat. They had never experienced such kindness before that they were wondering if it was all some elaborate hoax. But when they looked over to the children and saw how happy they were, how could they possibly refuse? They looked back as they nodded, tears starting to form in their eyes. Why yes, thank you so much. They began to cry as Inko walked over and hugged them both, tears in her own eyes as she was happy that her son had made a true friend that day. Meanwhile, a little earlier, Izuku and Aako walked into the living room as they looked back one last time to the adults. What do you think they want to talk about? Aako asked while Izuku shrugged his shoulders. I'm not sure, but if it has something to do with my grandpa ... it might be completely outrageous, he said as Aako chuckled a little at that. It was then that he realized he was alone with another child, a girl no less, as he blushed rapidly. Crap, I'm alone with a girl. What do I do? He panicked internally while Aako didn't notice. Okay, so what do you want to do first, Izuku? She asked as the boy looked nervous. Izuku, what's wrong? She asked as the boy stopped panicking and rubbed his arms bashfully. I don't really know how to play with someone else. She blinked in surprise. Really, but you're so nice. I thought you'd be an expert with playing with other people. He shook his head as he remembered the other kids isolating him. Back home I'm ... not very popular with the other kids. They say that because I don't have a quirk, I can't play with them and just leave me alone. Even during PE, no one wants to be with a useless Deku like myself. He spoke sadly as she raised an eyebrow. Deku, it's another way to read my name. It means useless and can't do anything. My old friend Kakin calls me that all the time ... He says that I'll never be as cool as him without a quirk, so he calls me Deku as an insult. She looked sad for him as he tried his best to brush it off. It's all right, I've gotten used to it. Don't mind me, he said while she shook her head. Well, I don't think you're useless and I sure as heck don't think you can't do anything. She spoke up as he blinked in shock. If it hadn't been for you, I could have gotten seriously hurt, but that rock. A useless person wouldn't have saved me as you did. You even did it without a quirk, and I think that's awesome. So, don't take any crap from them, because they clearly don't know you as I do. Because I think you're an amazing person, Izuku, she said with a determined and cheerful face as Izuku could only stare in shock. He stared at this determined and bright little girl as she said more encouraging and kind words than any of the other kids he had met in his life. She also didn't seem to care that he was quirkless, even thinking that he was amazing without one. Who the heck was she and why was she so nice to him? Besides, he looked back as she smiled. I think Deku sounds like a good name for you. Almost like Dekaru, meaning, can do anything, you know. Instantly he felt his heart clench and his face morphed into a strained but happy look. Whoa, what's up with your face? Are you all right? She asked worryingly as he shook his head. It's nothing, it's just you're so bright, he replied while she looked confused before regaining his normal composure. Thanks for being so kind to me, he said as she smiled and nodded. And hey, she looked back as he smiled. You can call me Deku if you want. It sounds nice now that it means something else, he said as she smiled and nodded. Sure, what are friends for? The two played heroes long into the night before eventually overcome by sleep and lying beneath blanket provided by their parents. Today the two had more fun than they ever had in their collective lives, never realizing that because of a simple picture frame their lives had drastically changed. They still had a long way to go before they could fulfill their dreams of becoming heroes. But for now, this was enough for the two of them. Years down the line the two would smile as they would remember the day that changed both their lives ... and the many trials that would come afterwards. A peaceful silence drifted over the forest as the sound of birds chirping resonated quietly in the air. A total calm washing over the large trees as everything was silent. Huh, heya, huh, howa. That was until the sound of fighting could be heard as the peace was broken. The animals scurried away as two figures could be seen fighting amongst the falling leaves. One a girl with brown hair and a bob haircut, and another with unkempt emerald green hair. The two trading blows as their fists and palms struck against each other. The boy thrust his palm forward to knock her back, but she moved out of the way and grabbed his wrist, ready to throw him over her shoulder. But the boy was prepared as soon as she made to flip him by shifting his weight and rolling just as he impacted on the ground, followed by sweeping at her feet. Every move she made he countered, almost as if he could predict her moves, similar with her as she countered his moves to a degree. The girl, however, never hit the ground as she floated in midair and thrust a kick towards the boy, who easily blocked it with crossed arms. I thought we agreed on no quirks, the boy asked as the girl grinned. Remember Sensei's first rule. Every skill you have is vital to your survival, so in a battle, there are no rules. She flipped herself over, released her quirk and re-engaged in combat. The boy jumping back as a small grin began to appear on his face. Is that so? Well then, she rushed forward to grab as her fingers were inches from his back. But just as she reached him, he turned around and grinned. How about this? Time seemed to stop as she stared into an almost exact replica of All Might's face, except for the bushy green hair, as the action caused her to halt in her place. Even the voice sounded the same as her face was momentarily stunned. PFFFTT. Before her cheeks puffed up and saliva rocketed out of her mouth, only to gasp when he grabbed her arms and flipped her on her stomach. Her arm twisted behind her back and a hand on her head as he pinned her to the ground. She looked stunned before a cross look appeared on her face. Hey, no fair. You know I can't help it when you make that face, Deku-kun. You agreed not to do that. He grinned. You said every skill is vital. Mine just happens to make you laugh, you're a Chan. Plus you just said there were no rules and used your quirk, so it's fair. She puffed her cheeks in annoyance while he chuckled and helped her back onto her feet. Okay, kids, that's enough. Izuku wins this round. An old voice spoke as the two looked towards Ryu as he sat under a tree, his hair grayer than it used to as well as a longer beard growing on his face. Ochako-chan, you need to stop losing your composure just because you see something funny. And Izuku, don't pull that face out while we're practicing ... It seriously creeps me out, the old man commented as they nodded. Hi, sensei. The two kids nodded. It had been 7 years since Izuku had met Ochako Uraraka and 10 years since he began his training in the ancient art of Haki, to harness the power of his inner fighting spirit and utilize it as a power to achieve his dream of becoming a hero like his idol, the #1 hero All Might. During those years Ochako had joined in on their training, as the old man and her parents wanted her to at least have some form of martial arts to defend herself. During that time the two had begun to grow up as both of them gained stronger physics and experience. Izuku's body had become more toned in the 7 years of training and even grew taller than Ochako, much to her shock when he came back to visit, as he stood a head taller than her. But he was not overly large, as his form was to complement his style of fast but strong hits. Ochako had become more fit and diverse when it came to combat, relying on grappling and disarming techniques to combat her opponents. She knew how to fight but preferred to take down her opponents rather than beat them to a pulp. She wanted to be a rescue heroine after all. Turned out she was a natural for grappling and disarming techniques. She even started picking up his habit of analyzing her opponents to a degree. It shocked her parents when she started muttering to herself like Izuku, who knew that the Midoriya mutter was contagious. Go figure. Their friendship, on the other hand, had grown significantly since the first day they met. Now considering themselves true childhood friends, the two were almost inseparable from each other, barring when Izuku had to return home, as the people of the town commented on how cute they looked together. It didn't help that Aako called him Deku as his new nickname, much to everyone's confusion barring Izuku, while Izuku started calling her Yura-chan out of courtesy. Everyone even teased them from time to time about looking like a couple, much to the embarrassment of the teen. Unknown to them that a large betting pool had accumulated about their future relationship started by the mothers of the pair. Speaking of, thanks to the help of the Midoriyas, which everyone just found it easier than saying Inko's maiden name, the Uraraka family had become more financially stable over the past 7 years. It wasn't enough to make them rich, as Ryu said, but the extra income was enough to keep the business afloat while also providing well for the family. They even hosted the Midoriya family for dinner from time to time as the families began to bond. The Urarakas felt truly blessed that they came into contact with the Midoriyas and considered them family for their help, never knowing that if it wasn't for a faulty picture frame, they would have never met them until years later. Okay, lovebirds, we're not lovebirds, the two shouted simultaneously with red faces, much to his amusement as he pointed to a rock. Kidding. But seriously, it's time, Izuku, to see the fruits of your training. He spoke seriously as the boy nodded. It took 10 years, but you managed to get observation Haki under control. I'm not really surprised that you mastered it so easily. Your natural observation skills were an indication of how well you would progress. I guess it was only natural you would master it first, and as for your armament, you can now project a light armor around your body. But now it's finally time to see if you can properly channel the next stage of armament without it suddenly fading off you. He lectured the boy as he nodded. Remember, Izuku, the key is having no doubts and no hesitation. Focus your spirit and harden yourself. Everything else will fall into place. Izuku looked to his hand as he felt a moment of hesitation before he felt a hand on his shoulder and a smile from Aako. You can do it, Deku-kun. He nodded as he smiled at his best friend, the boy walking over before he stood before a large boulder, its size several times larger than his own frame as it stood almost intimately over him. He looked down at his fist as a moment of hesitation stayed his feet, but a look back to his grandfather and Aako steeled his resolve as she nodded towards him. He took in a deep breath as he slid his feet back and closed his eyes, his body instinctively taking a fighter's stance as he pulled his right arm back to his hip and his left palm facing towards the stone. For a moment everything was silent as the only sound that could be heard was the rustling over leaves. His breathing was controlled, and his nerves were calm as he stood before the large piece of stone that barred him from his final test. He searched deep inside him as he focused on the energy that existed inside of him. From his mind, he began to see everything around him in colored shapes and sizes. His grandfather standing behind him with a careful stare and Aako looking nervous despite the calm appearance she portrayed. A small smile on his lips as he felt the energy surge inside of him and gather at his fist. He imagined it becoming a part of him, hardening around his arm and clinging to his skin like a second coat. When he felt that sensation, he thrust his fist forward and smashed it into the rock. A loud crack followed by the sound of crumbling rock forced him to open his eyes as the giant boulder had been reduced to rubble. He looked to his arm as a sense of joy flooded his system, staring at the appendage. The reason being was that the arm itself was now coated in a strange black substance that looked almost metallic in nature. To others, it would almost be confused for a hardening type quirk, which was fairly common. But for Izuku, Aako and Ryu it was more than that. It was an indication that the past 10 years of training had finally come to fruition. It finally meant, congratulations kid ... you've reached the second stage of Armament Haki. The substance faded as he felt no pain in his arm, only pride as he smiled at the man that gave him this ability. You did it. A sudden body latched onto him as for a moment he was stunned before the smiling face of Aako greeted him. See, I told you, you could do it. I'm so proud of you, Deku-kun. A bright smile on her face as he smiled back, before he realized his situation as he felt two ... surprises on his chest as he blushed rapidly and sputtered incoherent words. Deku-kun, what's wrong? Suddenly looking down she realized his sudden sporadic behavior as a blush quickly made its way over her face too. I'm sorry. Both of them turned into blushing stuttering messes as Ryu watched on with an amused happy smile on his face. Is it springtime already? Ryu Dojo. After that embarrassing moment was over, the three went back to the dojo as they discussed the next stages of their training over breakfast. It had become a habit that the Aako would join the Midoriyas for breakfast after training, mostly due to the fact that they acted as babysitters for her when her parents had to take work out of town for periods of time. But that only seemed to happen whenever Izuku came to visit. Coincidence? I think not. Either way, the young Uraraka girl was almost considered family to them. Inko especially took a liking to her because of how she treated Izuku as a regular person rather than how everyone else treated him back home. But that wasn't to say he was still being pushed around. Far from it, but we'll touch upon that later. Now the 5 of them were discussing their next moves. I'm very proud of both of you. You've both come really far since I started training you years ago, Ryu said as he looked to the 2 teens sitting next to each other. Aako-chan, since you've arrived, your fighting abilities have vastly improved these past 7 years. Yeah, not only are you now able to make yourself float, but you can do it without suffering from nausea. Izuku chimed in as the gravity girl smiled at the praise. However, you still have that weakness of nausea when you overuse your quirk for extended periods or exceed your weight limit. Not to mention you still can't help yourself when you see something funny and lose composure, he commented as she nodded, slightly embarrassed. Still, I have never seen anyone master as many grappling and takedown techniques as you have, young Aako-chan. You're even able to predict how your opponent will strike. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you have a limited access to observation haki. It is unfortunate that you haven't been able to harness armament haki, she smiled and shook her head. It's fine, sensei, I don't think it suits my style. My quirk cancels gravity, and to use it I think I need to be more ground-based. But being able to use a little of observation has definitely helped. Thank you, she said as he nodded and then turned to Izuku. As for you, Izuku, you have improved the most since you came here 10 years ago. When you came here you had almost lost all hope of ever becoming a hero. But through these past 10 years, you've not only met my expectations of your training, but you also blew some of them out of the water. It took me 20 years before I could summon the physical augmentation of Armament, while you've managed to do it in half the time. Not to mention your observation haki has far surpassed my own. I'm really proud of you, Izuku. He spoke with pride as the young man nodded with a smile on his face. That being said, you are still far away from completely mastering Armament haki and still have yet to access Conqueror's haki. At most, you can summon Armament on your arms and legs, and even your forehead if necessary. Not to mention you're still not fully accustomed to utilizing it in combat. Something we'll hopefully fix up before you got back in 3 weeks, he commented as Izuku nodded while Aako pouted. I hate it when you go back, it's not the same without you. She moped slightly as he chuckled. I know, it's not the same without you either. You're the only real friend I have. And we're only separated by 2.5 hours. But don't worry, that will all change once we make it into high school. He tried to comfort her as she nodded. Speaking of which, are you two still planning to go to UA? Inko asked as they both nodded. Yep, it has the best hero course anywhere in Japan. Deku told me that if you want to get recognized quickly as a pro hero, then UA is the place to go, Aako said as Izuku. Not to mention it was where all might graduate from. It would be awesome to go to the same school as him, Izuku said with a gleeful tone as Aako chuckled. You really are a big otaku, aren't you? She asked teasingly as Izuku blushed. I can't help it. He's the reason I want to become a hero in the first place. He is very inspirational, and I admire him so much. Is he also the reason you decorated your entire room in his merchandise? She grinned as he blushed to remember when she came to visit him with his grandfather and she saw his room. She had laughed so much that day he was afraid that she would never want to be friends with him again. Relax, Deku. You know I don't mind your All Might obsession. I think it's really cute. He blushed even more. It's still embarrassing, you know. She giggled at his reaction while the adults had small smiles on their faces. Young love. They all thought as the joint family continued their breakfast until Ryu coughed. So, I guess that means you're going to continue your training in Shizuoka. He nodded as he picked at his food. Yeah, with the exams coming up in 12 months I need to completely focus up my academics to pass the entrance exams and keep up the routine you set up for me and work on my haki. With their acceptance rate into the hero course as it is, I need to work extra hard if I want to make it into the course. So, unless I get a recommendation, I have to take the entrance exam like everyone else, Izuku said as he listed off his priorities for the UA exam. Ryu nodded as he looked to Aako. I suppose you'll want to continue training as well, Aako-chan. She nodded. I want to be able to extend my limit before the exam, brush up on my fighting moves and maybe learn more control over observation haki if you're available, sensei. He nodded as she sighed in relief. The biggest problem I have will be the written portion. I'm not that good with that kind of stuff, so I need to spend the next year studying up my academics as well if I want to make it. I can still help you with that. Now that your family doesn't have as many financial troubles as they used to, we can continue to chat online if that's okay with you, Yura-chan? Izuku asked as she nodded. Sure, thank you, Deku. Besides, we promised after all that we would both get into UA. No matter what, she smiled as he nodded to his childhood friend as they grasped each other's hands in a friendly manner, almost like making a vow to each other. You bet, he said while they continued to plan for the UA exam. Izuku looked around at everyone around him as he felt glad that his mother had decided to take him to see his grandparents over 10 years ago. He would have never built up the confidence he had now. He would have never thought of improving his own physical abilities to compete in the UA. Exams are considered another way to match up to his quirk competition. But most importantly, he would have never met his true best friend Aako. He felt truly blessed with the small chance of luck and hoped that it would continue on his path to becoming a hero, never knowing that his fate and the fate of everyone around him would change due to an unlikely meeting. 3 weeks later, Aldera Junior High. Aldera Junior High, located in Musutafu, Japan, was a small public school that wasn't widely known for anything spectacular. Its students were considered mostly average, hero society standards, as most of them either went on to do mundane jobs or become low-level heroes. The only outstanding students in the classes were Bakugo Katsuki with his explosive quirk and Izuku Midoriya, who constantly claimed he would become a hero despite not having a quirk. It was just another ordinary as the teacher, who honestly couldn't care less for his students, asked them all to consider what future career they want. But I know you're all going to just choose hero. Everyone in the class cheered and showed off their quirks. Yes, you all have great quirks, but you know it's against the rules to show them off at school. Don't lump me in with the rest of these extras. An arrogant voice spoke as everyone turned to the casually relaxing blonde-haired boy. Compared to me, these guys have got nothing against my quirk. Gah, says you Bakugo. Yeah, just because you have a flashy quirk doesn't mean you can be all high and mighty, you jerk. Shut up, you damn extras. He laughed as Izuku sighed behind him. Izuku looked at the back of his former childhood friend as he spoke arrogantly of his abilities. He had known Bakugo since he was born. Their mothers used to be friends in high school and continued to talk to each other years after. So naturally, they became friends in preschool, so he was used to his arrogance. Initially, when Kaken, the old nickname Izuku gave him, developed his quirk, he used to look up to him and his amazing power, following him around hoping to be as great as he was. At the time, it didn't matter that he didn't have a quirk so long as he continued his training with his grandfather. But then he suddenly started acting hostile to Izuku and their friendship splintered off ever since, and the two had a strained relationship. It didn't help when continued to pick on the other kids and Izuku stepped in to hold them off. Now the years that he spent training with his grandfather would have obviously made him stronger than Bakugo, despite his explosive quirk. But at a young age, he believed that those with powers should only use them to protect the innocent and never harm them. He felt the same with his training. He felt that he should only use it in the direst of circumstances, no matter how much Kaken hurt him. So, seeing as he could withstand Bakugo's quirk, he decided to do what a hero would do and protect those from his arrogance. That's right, Katsuki is applying for UA. Right, the teacher asked as he went back to reading from his textbook. Everyone stiffened and gasped at this. UA, but isn't that like one of the hardest hero schools to get into? Yeah, I heard the cutoff rate was 79 this year. That's right, you bunch chattering extras. None of you can compare to me. I aced the mock exam and am more qualified than any of you to get into UA. He jumped up on his desk. And once I graduate, I'll surpass even All Might himself. I'll become the best and richest hero of them all. He bellowed arrogantly with a smile on his face. Oh yeah, Midoriya, you're entering UA. Too right. That sentence alone stopped his rant as everyone turned to the green-haired boy that looked boringly at everyone while giving the teacher, who wasn't paying attention, the stink eye. Seriously, wasn't something like that supposed to be confidential between student and teacher? What kind of second-rate school was this? Though sure, paint a target on my back, why don't you? Everyone stared before they burst out laughing at the notion. See, for the entire 10 years that the students had known him, he never once developed any sign of a quirk. This day and age, people only ever cared about how flashy another person's quirk was and not about the person as an individual. And seeing as his training with Haki was mostly invisible, until he recently attained the second stage, most of them just believed he was quirkless. In the past, Izuku would have been overcome with anxiety and nervousness, seeing as he had no friends at Aldera and tended to spend most of his time training and studying. So he was considered unpopular by everyone. But because he built up confidence within himself and made a true friend in Aako, he really didn't care what others thought of him so long as he became a hero. Deku. He instantly moved his books out of the way as a fiery hand slammed into his desk. Thanks to his Haki, he was able to predict it and protect his supplies from damage. He didn't even flinch as Bakugo glared at him, hoping to intimidate the boy into submission. PFFT, fat chance of that happening. What the hell is this? You think you can rub shoulders with someone like me? Get bent. The hero course is no place for a quirkless person like you, he said with a snide voice at the green head, who only looked back blankly at him. First off, please stop setting my desk on fire. I'd rather not have to go through another school year with the smell of burnt desk wood. Second, last time I checked, this is a free country and I have a right to participate in the exam just as much as you, especially now that they got rid of the quirk rule. Besides, it never hurts to try, right? he asked with a straight face as Bakugo and everyone else just laughed at him. Try. You want to try? Get real, Deku. What the heck can you even do anyway? He resisted using his haki to prove him wrong as everyone continued to laugh at him. More than you know, Kakin. More than you know. Downtown, near Tatooine Station. Meanwhile, far away, a villain made of pure sludge grabbed a purse from an unsuspecting lady as he ran quickly from the scene, unaware of a skeletal-looking man walking out of a convenience store, with drinks and clothes several sizes too big for him. Haha, good luck, losers. Nobody can stop me with my quirk, he yelled as he ran from the scene. He noticed the commotion as everyone called out for a hero. From behind them, steam started to rise from his body as his skinny frame slowly began to bulge and develop into muscle. Have no fear. Why? Everyone turned and even the villain gasped as the man grinned. Because I am here. Aldera Junior High, after school. The students began to gather and exit the classroom as some of them chatted about new things like games and stuff, while others asked if they wanted to go karaoke. Izuku, on the other hand, had plans to continue his training and then Skype Aako for another study session tonight. But before he could grab his hero analysis journal, Bakugo grabbed it and held it out of his reach. Deku, we're not done yet. He angrily spoke to the boy as Izuku sighed. Of course not. When are we ever? He thought as he turned to Kakin and his two other lackeys. It was always like this. Bakugo and his gang would gang up on him, tell him how weak and pathetic he was and try to crush his resolve to become a hero. Honestly, at this point, it was like listening to a broken record player, which was why Izuku just stared boringly at him. A thing he found that pissed Bakugo off more since he no longer took satisfaction in the fear that would have otherwise permeated his face. What the heck is this? Hero analysis for the future? Huh. What a nerd. One of the lackeys spoke as Bakugo held it in his hands before igniting it with his quirk. A brief flash of anger crossed Izuku's face before he managed to restrain himself. Listen up, Deku. The best heroes showed signs of greatness even as children, because they, like me, have powerful quirks that make them stand out more than people like you that have no quirks. I'm going to be the first and only student from this crappy school to enter UA and become a hero, because let's face it, I'm better than everyone here. But you, on the other hand, have no special qualities or talents other than academics. Face the facts. No one will accept a quirkless loser like you as a hero no matter how hard you try. So vain. Bakugo placed his hand on his shoulder as smoke began to rise from his jacket. So, listen, will you damn nerd. Give up that useless dream and don't you even think about entering UA. Got it, he stressed, trying to threaten him with his quirk. But Bakugo failed to realize that the jacket was not burning as Izuku merely stared back at him with no hint of trepidation or anger. Are you done? Because I really want to go home and you're blocking my way, he said as instead of fear it was a more bored tone that Bakugo grew more pissed at and decided to leave. Of course, being the egotistical, superior complex, arrogant brat that he was, he always had to have the last word. You really want to be a hero so bad? Then why don't you jump off the roof and pray you to get a quirk in your next life? At that point, both of them realized that it went too far. It was something that was never to be said to another person, no matter how much you disliked him. Despite his attitude, Bakugo was a smart kid and always tried to be careful at school lest he jeopardizes his chances at getting into UA. Deep down even he knew he crossed a line. But he had said it and it was up in the air and it wasn't like he was ever going to take it back. Luckily for him, Izuku was stronger than he ever gave him credit for, both physically and mentally, and knew he would never consider the option. Both of them left the room that had gained an awkward silence as he fished the book out of the koi pond. Good thing I sprung for the water-resistant paper, he joked while his mind was thinking back to what he said as he shook his head. What was he thinking? Doesn't he know that's the last thing a hero should say? He shook his head and began to walk home, going through a small tunnel as he failed to notice the sewer drain begin to move. Get a hold of yourself, Izuku. Remember what Grandpa said. Don't let others tell you what to do. Life is your choice and yours alone. So, what if he and everyone else thinks you can't be a hero? I'll show him and everyone that I can be a hero. Just stiffen that upper lip and laugh in the face of adversary. Just like All Might. Ha. A large shape quickly emerged from a manhole cover. He spun around to see a large green liquid rushing towards him. Shit, he yelled too late as the liquid quickly wrapped itself around him. The substance quickly wrapping around his throat and mouth, effectively cutting off his air circulation. A medium-sized body to hide in. Perfect. The substance with two yellow eyes and jagged teeth said as it wrapped around the young Midori. Shit, a villain. How the hell did he sneak up on me? I must not have been paying attention. Shit, rookie mistake. Contrary to belief, observation Haki was not all-seeing. It needed to be consciously active in order for the user to detect another's presence. Because Izuku had been distracted by his former friend's crude suicide goading, he failed to keep up his Haki and got attacked. It also can't predict random attacks that the user or the attacker can't predict. That was the only reason he got ambushed. Relax, kid. I'm just hijacking your body for a bit. HMM. You have a strong body. You've really saved me, hero. He spoke mockingly as he strangled the boy. I never expected him to be in this town. But don't worry, it'll only hurt for 45 seconds, then it will be all over. He laughed as Izuku continued to struggle. No use, kid. I'm made of liquid. You can't do anything. Can't breathe. Losing oxygen. See, can't focus my haki. Shit, Grandpa is going to be so pissed when he finds out about this. His vision began to darken as he slowly turned his gaze to the villain as his grinning smile reminded him of everyone in his life that doubted him. Everyone that believed he can't be a hero because of his quirkless birth. Everyone from the day he found out that he was quirkless that he could never be a hero ... and that snapped something inside of him. Let ... me ... slowly turning his head to the eye, as every emotion he ever felt bubbled to the surface. Let ... me ... he stared straight into his eyes as he glared into his soul. Let me go. The villain visibly shook as he stared into the eyes of the green-haired boy, something inside him shaking from fear as if he was staring at death itself. What the hell? Before anything else could happen, the manhole cover exploded off as a triumphant voice called out, "Fear not, young man." The villain and Izuku turned and gasped, if he could, as a tall muscular man stood before them. "For I am here." Izuku's eyes widened in shock and awe as he instantly recognized the man before him. "Oh might. Shit, he found me." The villain yelled as he tried to make a run for it only to be stopped by these two words. "Texas." He flung his fist towards the sludge. Smash! A large and powerful gust of wind slammed into the two of them as the villain splattered the villain off Izuku. If he were weaker in the past, Izuku would have been knocked out by the sudden shockwave. But thanks to his training and haki mastery, he was able to stay conscious. He stared in awe at the man he considered his idol. A man who had quickly risen to the ranks of the #1 hash in all of Japan and considered a symbol of peace. He's ... he's so much cooler in person. The man flashed his signature smile. Faster than Izuku could register, the man had somehow quickly gathered up the remains of the sludge villain and shoved him into a 2-liter bottle of soft drink. "Young man, are you all right?" he asked. Izuku could only numbly nod, being in front of his idol. "Thank goodness. I must apologize for getting you caught up in my villain hunt. The little bugger tried to lose me in the sewers and I got a little lost. Mistakes like that aren't my style. But thanks to your bravery, I was able to contain the villain," he proclaimed as Izuku continued to just stare at the man. Kid, are you all right?" he asked when Midoriya said nothing for the last minute. Why, it's really you. All Might," he suddenly yelled. "Gah, don't scare me like that. You nearly gave me a heart attack." Sorry, it's just that you're ... you're All Might. The real All Might. Yes, I am well aware of who I am," he joked as Izuku quickly stumbled around and grabbed his notebook. Would it be alright if you signed my notebook? I promise I'll take great care of it," he asked as the man merely laughed and opened up the small notebook. "Sure thing, anything for my fans." He turned the pages looking for a space to write. But while also looking over the notebook, he noticed all sorts of statistics and data regarding most of the heroes that were on public duty. It even listed their quirks, pros and cons depending on the situation. My word, these are extremely well detailed and precise. He even has accurate data on Mount Lady's quirk, and she only just debuted today. This boy has extremely keen observation skills. If this were to fall into the hands of villains, it could be bad. He looked to the boy who was staring at him with admiration and pride. This kid, he has a very sharp mind. Could he? He shook his thoughts away and wrote his signature on the paper. "Here you go, young man. Don't go trying to use that to forge my identity or something like that. That would be most villainous," he advised as Izuku nodded. "Say it would be a family heirloom for generations to come." He was so glad Ochako wasn't here, otherwise he'd never hear the end of it. Just as he was about to jump away, a thought had surfaced in Izuku's mind. Something that had been bugging him for the past 10 years he spent training. Something that he knew neither Ochako nor his grandfather could answer. Something he needed to ask the #1 hash hero himself. All Might jumped into the air as he sailed across the city until he noticed something off about his jump. I'm lagging." He looked down and nearly gasped in shock at the same kid from before as he held onto the man's waist with a strangely calm look on his face. "What the hell? Excuse me, but there's something I got to ask you, something really important," he yelled over the wind. "This is kind of invasive, kid. I love my fans, but this is too much. Let go." "But it's really important. Plus, if I let go at this height, I don't think I will survive the fall." That's a good point." The two landed on a rooftop as All Might looked a little upset. Of all the reckless things teenagers do, this is a new one. "Hopefully, someone will let you down from here if you call out." "I really have to go, kid," he said as he turned away. "Wait a minute," he called out. "There's something really important I need to ask you, something I think only you can answer." The man was about to jump away again when he asked, "Is it possible for someone to be recognized as a hero, even without a quirk?" This seemed to stop him as he lingered near the edge. "Recognized without a quirk?" the man asked before he stiffened. "Shit, not now." Izuku nodded, completely missing the steam rolling off the man's body. You see, when I was 4, I was diagnosed as quirkless. The doctors said it had something to do with my toes. But that's not important. He looked down at the sad day replayed in his head. Ever since I was little, I always wanted to become a hero, thinking I would be an awesome hero once I got my quirk. But when I found out I didn't have one, I was nearly crushed. At first, I thought there was no way I could be a hero. But then my mother took me to see my grandfather and changed my life. He smiled at the memories of his grandfather's words, all the while ignoring the man's size shrinking slightly. I've spent 10 years training myself in order to become a hero, pushing myself to the limit so I could fulfill my dream and my promise. But even though my family and my best friends say I can be a hero, I need to know from you. I want to know if I can become a great hero and recognized as one without a quirk, who can save people with a fearless smile on his face. He looked up and smiled to the man. I want to know if I can become a hero just like Y, instead of seeing All Might in his muscular form. What he met was a frail, skinny-looking man with black sclere and blue eyes with shaggy blonde hair that had 2 bangs hanging down his face. He stared in absolute silence, trying to register what he was seeing. After a little bit, he finally found the right words. "What the hell?" he yelled. "W, who are you? Where's All Might? I can assure you, kid, I am All Might Blurg." A waterfall of blood rolled out his mouth, causing the boy to freak out even more. At first, he tried to see if he was a fake and used his Haki to sense if the man was an imposter. But the energy he felt was similar to the man who saved him, and he could detect no hint of lying in his voice. "All Might, is that really you? What happened to you and why do you look like that?" he asked as the man sat down. "Well, kid, this is my true form. Whenever I'm out heroing, I buff my body up to use my quirk, kind of like a guy at the pool who's constantly holding in his gut. As for why I'm like this is ... is because of this." He lifted up his shirt as Izuku nearly gagged at the sight. On the left side of his chest was a large scar that spread out like a ghastly spider's web, radiating from a nasty hole-shaped scar in the center. Small healed-over holes indicated the use of stitches and God knows what else. It was almost like something had been driven into his chest. "Pretty nasty, huh? I got this 5 years ago from an enemy I'd rather not talk about. My respiratory system was nearly destroyed, and my stomach was removed due to the damage. I've wasted away because of the after effects of those constant surgeries. Now because of it, I can only be a hero for 3 hours a day." "No way. Wait, 5 years ago? Was that when you faced Toxic Chainsaw?" He chuckled to himself as he lowered his shirt. "You've done your homework." "Nah, that punk couldn't have inflicted this type of damage to me. No, this was made by an old enemy of mine that was never made public. More, I asked it not to be made public. I asked because the symbol of peace needs to appear invulnerable, to show that he can never be daunted by evil. If this made it out, then villains would become more brazen. Which is why I always smile, so that they can never know of the overwhelming pressure and fear I feel." Izuku was shocked as he heard these words from his hero, a man who always smiled in the face of adversary no matter how dire the situation. But hearing the reason behind his smile nearly shook up something inside of him. "But to answer your question ... and no, I don't think you can be recognized as a hero without a quirk." His heart jumped in his chest as a feeling of despair punched him in the chest. "You can train all you want and build up all kinds of muscle, but it won't matter when the guy you're up against can shoot laser beams out of his eyes. Pro-heroing is a dangerous occupation and we are expected to risk our lives to save the people. Without a quirk, I'm afraid it's an impossible dream." Izuku felt his soul shake with grief as his idol spoke those words. "If you truly desire to help people, then become a police officer. They're often mocked for cleaning up after a hero's work, but they are admirable and noble professionals. There's no shame in that career path." He got up and began to walk away without looking at the boy. "It's not wrong to strive towards a dream ... but you have to balance it with reality as well." Izuku was left alone on the rooftop as he processed what his idol had just told him, which was the same thing he heard growing up from everyone else. Without a quirk, he couldn't be a hero. Today ... it just stung worse. He hung his head as his fist shook. Seriously, him too. A tear forming in his eye as he tried to hold in all his emotions, but failed as the tears streaked down his face and he cried for the first time in years. Earlier, Bakugo growled in annoyance as he and his 2 lackeys were following him home. His mind was still on about Deku and how he wanted to become a hero despite not having a quirk. It wasn't just that he thought it was completely stupid because the damn nerd lacked a quirk, but it was also the fact he wouldn't just give up. No matter what he said or did to the nerd, he refused to give up. Even stood up to him on several occasions. He had no idea when it was that Deku started to backchat him, but it was seriously pissing him off. Stupid effing Deku. Who the hell does he think he is? He growled while kicking a bottle away. Weren't you a little hard on him today? One of his lackeys said as he pulled out a cigarette. Yeah, I mean you guys grew up together, didn't you? We stopped hanging out when he kept going to visit his grandfather who lives in God knows where. I don't really care, but it's his fault for messing me up. Seeing him so full of stupid dreams like when we were kids just pisses me off. He exploded the can in his hand as they flinched back. And what the hell did I tell you two about smoking around me? If I'm caught with a whiff of that stuff on me, it goes in my permanent record. He yelled to, scolding the two until he noticed the absolute terror on their faces. My your body. A voice spoke behind him as a large sludge-like being quickly surrounded him. What a powerful quirk you have. Mind if I borrow it? His vision was clouded as all he knew was darkness. Back with All Might. All Might sighed, or rather Toshinori Yagi, as he made his way down the stairs. Today was not a good day. Because of that villain from before and the fanboy, he used up the rest of his 3-hour time limit. Now if there was a danger, he would have to leave it up to the other heroes. Not only that, but now someone else had discovered his secret. Mostly he was just worried that the fanboy would leak his secret online. But there were contingencies in place for that. But something told him he wouldn't do something like that. He realized that he may have been a little harsh telling the boy something like that, mostly due to his own injuries that clouded his judgment, but it was for his own good and he would get over it. Heroing was dangerous and he had already paid the price for it. There was no point in becoming a hero if you weren't ready to put your life on the line. That's what his sensei taught him. His mind drifted back to the boy as he reminded him of himself years ago, back when he too was quirkless and he met the person he considered his sensei. Maybe I was a bit too hard on him, but I can't let that bother me now. I got to get this guy into the police station. He stopped to pat his pants but found the bottle was missing. His eyes winded in terror when a large explosion resonated downtown and his heart dropped into his chest. At the same time, Izuku was walking home as he replayed the words his idol had said to him. Now others would have wondered why he didn't mention his abilities in Haki, how with it he could match himself up to a villain. Well, it was because he wanted to test a professional hero standing on a quirkless civilian joining the hero career. He wanted to see that, even without a quirk or his Haki powers, he could be seen and recognized as a hero people could count on, to save them with a fearless smile on his face. But today had just proven what he had already known. The hero society and the world itself would never recognize him as a hero because of his quirkless nature. It hurt even more when his idol and the reason for him wanting to be a hero told him the same thing. He looked at his hands and he thought about all the training he had done for the past 10 years and wondered if he had just been wasting his time. But then a small memory played in his mind. Back when he and Aako were young and she said that he was amazing even without a quirk, and he felt his resolve be renewed. He slapped his cheeks and shook his head. What the hell am I thinking? So, what if even All Might thinks I can't be a hero? Big whoop. I've had to deal with that sort of crap for all my life and I didn't let it bother me, so why should it now? He slapped a hand to his chest and grinned. I shouldn't care if Kaken, the world, or even All Might tell me I can't be a hero. I am going to be hero. I'm going to prove them all wrong, even if I have to do it as a quirkless Deku for the rest of my life. Because one day I'll become the Deku who can do anything. He yelled as he laughed triumphantly. Man, it's a good thing the streets are empty or that would be embarrassing. Speaking of which, where is everyone? It's 4 p.m. The train streets should be packed by now. He looked around at the deserted streets before he noticed a large gathering near the entrance of the market. He managed to peek his way through as the entire streets were set ablaze. Multiple heroes such as Death Arms, Kamui Wood, Backdraft, and Mount Lady were on the scene but were having difficulty controlling the situation. Man, this must be one tough villain if the pros are having trouble. Izuku questioned as he managed to peek over and gasped when he saw the familiar sludgy shape of the sludge villain from before. That guy, what's he doing here? Did he escape from All Might, or? He gasped in realization. Or was it when oh god, it's my fault he escaped. He hissed to himself, completely unaware that not that far from him All might be in a similar predicament. Shit, I used up my limit. I can't do anything. He grasped at his side where his injury was as he cursed himself. Pathetic. I'm pathetic. Why aren't the heroes doing anything? One of the citizens asked as Izuku turned to him. I hear it's because that villain is holding a middle schooler hostage. They can't get close enough without dealing damage to him. That made Izuku shudder as he couldn't imagine the type of fear that must be haunting the kid he took hostage. His eyes widened even further when he managed to see it was Bakugo as he was held in the grasp of the villain. Kaken, such a powerful quirk, the villain roared. With this, I should be able to take on even All Might himself. He laughed as Bakugo continued to struggle against the villains, only for his explosions to do more damage to the streets. It's all my fault. If I hadn't stopped All Might, this wouldn't have happened. Shit. He cursed himself as he looked upon the scene, feeling largely responsible for the damage that was unfolding. But just when he thought there was nothing he could do, Bakugo looked up as for a brief moment the look in his eyes told him one thing. Help. He didn't know what happened to him then, or why he did what he did. But all that mattered was that he had to do something as he bolted from the crowd and ran towards the villain. The pro heroes and even All Might gaped in shock as the young boy ran towards the villain. Let him go, you bastard. He roared as he ran at the villain. Deku, Bakugo thought in shock while the villain cursed. That kid again. The villain instantly recognized him as his sludge-like body grabbed a few pieces of concrete. "You're dead meat, kid. Take this," he yelled as he threw the piece of stone. Izuku instantly activated his Haki as he dodged and weaved his way past the boulders, his body sensing the paths they would follow and moving out of the way in an almost expert-like manner. "What the hell?" was the general thought of everyone as Izuku drew closer to the villain. "How did he?" All Might thought as he drew closer. The sludge villain growled as he managed to bring one of Bakugo's arms up and fling his explosion at the boy. "Eat this," he yelled as a large explosion rocketed towards him, the blast just clipping the right side of Izuku's arm as the sleeve of his school jacket burned away. But when the flames dissipated, his arm was perfectly fine as not even a single burn was present on his pale skin. "What the hell?" he roared as All Might gasped in shock. Izuku pulled back his arm as he ran towards the villain, his training kicking into overdrive as he focused his Haki into his right arm. What happened next shocked the number one hero in Bakugo as his arm was coated in a strange black metallic substance. "What the heck? I thought he said he was quirkless," All Might thought as the boy ran and flung his fist to strike the villain. "Kid, no. Physically attacks won't work on him." Death Arms yelled as the villain grinned. "You seriously going to try and hit me? Fat chance. My body is made of liquid dumbass. Nothing you do is going to GF you." The moment his fist impacted on the villain's body, his eyes nearly popped out of his head as Izuku's Haki-coated fist struck his liquid form right between his eyes as his body was thrown backwards. "Hey!" yelled all the heroes and citizens as even All Might himself gaped in shock and their eyes nearly popped out of their heads. What the hell? How the F did that hurt me?" the villain yelled as Izuku grinned and grabbed the shirt of Bakugo. "That was the power of my fighting spirit. Something not even your villainous body can withstand," he yelled, adrenaline rushing through his body as his confidence had skyrocketed, his words almost resonating amongst the crowd as everyone stared in awe, even causing some of them to cheer and encourage him on. He managed to pull Bakugo halfway out of the disoriented villain and freed him from suffocating. "What the hell, Deku? How are doing that? And why the hell did you run out here?" Bakugo yelled as Izuku continued to pull. "Honestly, because my legs moved on their own. And someone told me that a hero needs to be willing to put his life on the line." All Might flinched at the memory as Izuku looked up and smiled as the next words he said resonated to the hearts of many. "Besides, you looked like you needed help." All Might gasped as the words he said resonated greatly within him as he hung his head and grasped the pole tighter. "I really am pathetic." Steam rolled off his body as his arm began to enlarge. "Arg, you brat," the villain roared as he pulled against Bakugo, while Izuku continued to pull as well, his feet digging into the concrete as he struggled to pull out his old friend. The sludge whipped out as he grabbed a small bit of rubble and tried to bash his face, but Izuku managed to barely avoid the hit as it scratched just under his eye. But he didn't care about that as he continued to pull. "Just hang on, kid," Death Arms yelled as he and the other heroes sprung into action. "Help is coming," the villain growled as he grabbed more rocks and flung them at the heroes. "Stop, stay back," he roared as he forced them back, his attention directed solely on Izuku as his friend made quick to grab him. "I'll finish you off for good this time," he roared as Izuku cursed and made ready to sacrifice himself to save Bakugo. But just as the liquid made to grab him, a large figure stood in his path and blocked the attack as the crowd and villain gasped in shock. "All Might," they yelled as the man grinned. "I really am pathetic." He spoke low enough for Izuku to hear as he stared at the back of the man. "I told you what it takes to be a hero, yet I didn't practice what I preached." Blood spluttered from his mouth as he quickly pulled the two boys away from the villain. A pro hero should always be ready to risk his life. "Thank you for reminding me, young man." "No, not again," the sludge villain yelled as All Might threw his fist. "Detroit." He swung his fist with all his strength. Smash! A powerful shockwave, much larger than the last one, blasted the villain to pieces and doused all the flames in the area. Everyone else had to brace themselves as the shockwave slammed against them. No one moved an inch as they all just stared in awe at the spectacle, until a small drop of water slashed down, followed by a downpour of water. "Holy crap," Izuku muttered as he looked at the man. He changed the weather ... with one punch. The crowd cheered as All Might stood victorious over the defeated villain, the crowd cheering his name as he stood before them. But while everyone was focused on him, they never realized the man had his gaze set on the green-haired boy and the metallic surface that covered his arm. Afterwards, the heroes gathered up the remains of the villain and started cleaning up the mess. Izuku got scolded by the heroes, mostly due to the fact that he was a civilian and he ran into an ongoing hero work when he wasn't supposed to, while Bakugo was praised for his bravery for holding out as long as he did. Officially, they had to scold him so that others wouldn't get the same idea. "That was very irresponsible of you. A civilian should never get involved in a hero's work. You could have been killed." Death Arms scolded Izuku as a medic finished patching the scratch under his eye and inspecting his arm, saying that he was lucky it wouldn't scar and was surprised that there were no burns on his arm. But the boy held his head down as they scolded him. That being said, he spoke as he made sure no one was looking. Unofficially, I have to say that was some pretty good moves back there, kid. If you hadn't managed to hit that guy, that boy may have ended up dead. Thank you. Maybe when you graduate and become a pro you can come and work for me. That quirk of yours is pretty handy. Izuku shook his head much to his surprise. Thanks, but I don't have a quirk ... so I doubt that can happen. He stood up as the man looked shocked. Not a quirk? Then what was? Hey, wait. He called out as the boy continued to walk away. Before he could go after him, the media surrounded him as they questioned him about the boy who rushed in, never realizing that he had already disappeared. Later, close to Izuku's home, Izuku continued to walk home as he thought about what had just happened today. He met his idol, got into a fight with a villain, and used his training to save the life of the one kid who had bullied him for most of his life. He still didn't know why he did that, why he just suddenly ran out into the battlefield with barely an idea. But something inside him told him it was the right thing to do, and was just glad that everyone was okay and that he saved Bakugo. Deku, oh boy. He turned to see a clearly pissed off Bakugo as he marched up and grabbed his school jacket. You effing jerk, what the hell was that back there? How the hell did you manage to hit that guy when I couldn't? And what the hell was up with your arm? He yelled into his face as he gestured to his sleeveless arm that was wrapped in bandages, just in case. Bakugo looked furious as he glared into Izuku's eyes. You've been lying to me about being quirkless, haven't you? Did you actually have a quirk this whole time and was just pretending to be useless all these years to make me look bad? Why the hell didn't you use it till now? Explain, you effing nerd. He yelled, hoping to intimidate the boy into revealing his secret. But Izuku merely stared as he grabbed his wrist and slowly removed it from his jacket, much to his surprise. I've never lied about being quirkless. In fact, I still don't even have quirk. What you saw was the result of my training and hard work, he explained as he glared at the boy. I've spent 10 long and grueling years to be able to do what you saw today so that I could become a hero like I dreamed to be. And the reason I never used it till now is unlike you. I don't need to show off my power to make me feel better about myself. I promised I would never use them to hurt others. Instead, I would use them to protect people like a real hero. Bakugo flinched as he glared at him. So, you can be angry with me all you want, but I'm still going to become a hero, whether you like it or not. Bakugo glared before he tightened his fist and stomped off. Fine, keep lying. I don't give a shit. That shitty quirk of yours is no match for mine. And for the record, I had everything under control, so don't get all high and mighty. I'm still going to kick your ass. Effing Deku, he yelled as he stormed away. Such a tough guy persona. He sighed before he called out over his shoulder. He's gone, you can come out now. Just like that, All Might dashed onto the scene. I am here, just as you predicted, he proclaimed as he looked to the boy. Interesting sensory abilities, young man. I could have sworn I hid better. After all, I am All Might Cuff. He poofed back to his normal form as Izuku didn't flinch like last time. You all right? Yeah, sorry about that. But anyway, that was some pretty interesting abilities you showed back there. What was that anyway? I thought you said you were quirkless. Did you lie to me or something? He asked with a small amount of accusation in his voice as Izuku shook his head. I didn't lie to you. My abilities just aren't quirk-related. It's a fighting style my grandfather taught me when I was 4 years old. He calls it Haki. Haki. He mouthed the word as Izuku nodded. Yeah, it uses my fighting spirit to coat my attacks in my spirit, I guess you could say, and utilize it as a weapon. But that my body is physically stronger. My senses become sharper, allowing me to predict my enemy's attacks, and I am able to use it to physically harm another individual by attacking their spirit with my own. It's especially effective against those with intangible or unstable bodies, he explained. Is that how you were able to harm that Sludge guy and dodge his attacks? He nodded. But if you could harm him, then why did I have to rescue you back then? He asked as Izuku looked away bashfully. Well, the thing about Haki is if I'm not concentrating, I can't predict another's attacks or if they are just random acts with no thought. Also, he was cutting off my airflow, which is a necessary key to controlling it. No air, no techniques. All Might nodded. But if you had these powers, then why didn't you tell me? My answer to your earlier question would have been different. Why keep it a secret? Izuku sighed as he looked at his bandaged hand. That's exactly the reason why. I wanted to know if I could be seen as a hero even if I never had my Haki or a quirk. I wanted to know, from you, if there was even a slight possibility that I could be a hero without one. It was a test to see how you would respond ... and you said the same thing as everyone else in my life. Every time. He looked sadly as All Might hung his head when he realized the kid's reasoning ... and he felt ashamed. Kid, but you know what I realized? All Might blinked as Izuku shook his head. I realized that I shouldn't care what anyone thinks. If everyone just did as they were told, then some of the greatest people on Earth wouldn't have been recognized for his or her great achievement. I decided that if everyone thinks I can't be a hero, then I'll just have to prove them wrong and become one without a quirk. He looked up as determination shone in his eyes. I will always respect you, All Might, more so knowing that you continue being a hero despite your injury and limits. It's something I find truly inspiring. but I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to become a hero even if I have to go up against the whole world to do it." He pointed a finger to the sky. "Because I made a promise to myself and a dear friend of mine years ago that I will become a hero. Because my name is Izuku Midoriya, and one day it will be the Deku who can do anything," he proclaimed as All Might listened to his every word and felt something stir within him and grinned. He's the one." Izuku blushed a little before bowing. "Anyway, I'm sorry I got in the way of your heroing and let the monster escape. I promise it will never happen again, and I hope to see you again one day in the future. Goodbye." He started to turn around. "Wait, kid," he called out as the boy stopped. "There is a reason I came looking for you. Both to thank you, revise something I said earlier, and offer you a proposal." He looked confused as All Might stared into his eyes. "If you hadn't jumped into action, if you hadn't told me your life story, I would have just been another bystander on the street, and that Bakugo kid would have been done for. Then all my words would have been empty and insincere. Thank you for reminding me what it means to be a hero." Izuku stared in awe before shaking his head. "And no, you don't have to apologize. Like I said, it was my fault he got away. All I really did was get in your way. No. To be truthful, out of everyone there, you were the bravest of us all. You acted when no one else could and saved the life of that young boy. Truly, you spurred me into action." Izuku stared in awe as the man grinned to him. "Do you want to know something about the greatest heroes that existed? They showed signs of greatness because they all claimed that in times of turmoil, their bodies just moved on their own, which is what I'm guessing happened to you, right?" He felt his heart beat in his chest as he nodded. "I thought so. Kid. I wanted to let you know." His heart beat faster as he felt tears forming in his eyes. "That you can be a hero." At that moment, Izuku felt something insanely similar to what he felt with his grandfather in Ochako years ago. A feeling that he still couldn't describe but cherished because it gave him hope. If he could describe it in one word, it would be happy. Happy that even his idol thought he could be a hero. Thank you, All Might. You have no idea how much that means to. Which is why I want you to inherit my quirk." A beat of silence drowned the small street as he stared into the utmost serious face of his hero and attempted to process the words that he said. He blinked, he cleared his ear and even shook his head to check if he heard him wrong. He was even going to ask him to explain what he meant using careful and comprehensive words, but his only response was, "Wait, what?" Izuku stared in confusion as he stood before the number one hero, All Might, the symbol of peace. The man who was renowned for single-handedly bringing the crime rate in Japan down massively, becoming a deterrent on crime itself whenever he appeared. His actions had earned himself the title of Symbol of Peace. Not only that, but a few hours ago he was saved by the legendary hero himself and even assisted him in the battle of the Sludge villain. The man then went on to tell him, after initially telling he couldn't, that he could, in fact, be a hero because of his bravery. It was something like this that Izuku should be focusing on. However, "You want me to what?" He stared in shock as the man nodded his head. "I want you to inherit my quirk." "What part of that didn't you understand?" "Oh, I don't know, maybe the whole inheriting thing." "What kind of a question is that? Inherit your quirk? Do you have any idea how insane that sounds? Why, you can't just give a quirk away like a present or a pair of socks. They're supposed to be individual powers that are unique to a single person. Sure, there are cases of the same quirks being passed down genetically, although with a few differences, but you're talking about actually giving me your quirk. And as far as I know, we are not related, although that would be totally awesome being related to you. And not in a weird way, and it's impossible because I know who my father is. But then again, I haven't seen him in 10 years and blah, 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 blah." He trailed off into a mutter as All Might just stared perplexed. Kid, I think you're overthinking this whole thing." He didn't hear him as he sighed. "Knock it off already." That finally snapped him out of it as All Might sighed. "Look, there are a lot of things I keep to my chest, but this something I'm not lying about. A lot of the time the media tries to guess what my power is, thinking I have super strength or power boost, but I manage to avoid those questions and keep my quirk a secret." He looked up to the sky as his hand stretched to the sky, because it would do no good if they discovered that the number one hero was born quirkless. Izuku gasped and stared at the man. "You were quirkless too." He nodded. "Yeah, since you told me the truth of your power, and because of what I said before, I feel like I owe you the truth. Yes, I too was born quirkless, until I met someone that changed my life around. She gave me this power in order to save the lives of the innocent and protect this fragile world. It is the ability to transfer this quirk to another individual." He held out his hand as it almost seemed to shine. "The power I have is called One for All. One for all. Like the Three Musketeers quote." All Might nodded as he chuckled at that. "Yes, see how it works is that it started off as one power and then that power was transferred to another. The new user cultivated that power and passed it on to another. This process was repeated several times over the past 100 years. Each time it was passed on, it became stronger. It is a crystalline networking power that gives me the power to save those that cry out in fear. I am the 8th user of this power, and now I hope you will become the 9th. But why are you giving it to me? Surely you must have had someone else in mind before me? Yes, there were others that I considered or were recommended to me. But honestly, you were braver than any of those heroes that were out there today. Braver than even me, someone I believe is worthy to inherit this power. You embody the very virtue of heroism and self-sacrifice that I believe makes a great hero. He looked down as he grasped at his side. But also, I won't be able to do this forever. He gestured to his frail and injured body. You see me as I am now, right? Today was just an example of what could potentially happen when my body can no longer continue being a hero. One of these days someone is going to get the drop on me. My body will shut down or I'll lose my step and I will die or be forced to quit. Do you know what will happen when that occurs? The crime rate will increase. The foundations that you laid by being the deterrent of evil will crumble and panic will ensue. He nodded as the thought alone scared both of them. In order to prevent that, the hero academies are trying to pump out more heroes in order to dissuade that inevitability until I find a successor to my power. But before that, I must ensure that this power is safely passed on to the next generation of heroes that will protect this world. It is a power that must continue to fight against the darkness. But I cannot just hand this power over to any individual. I need to pass it on to someone who embraces the ideologies of heroism and self-sacrifice ... just as my master did so for me. He gestured to the boy before him. You are the only person I have met that fits these criterions. You are the only one I truly believe is worthy of inheriting my power. In you, I see now the next symbol of peace. Izuku stared in awe as he felt the weight of the man's words and the belief he had in him. It was something he felt proud of. However, he looked up as All Might waved his hand. You don't have to take this power if you don't want to. You just said before that you would prove me wrong and become a hero without one. I'll take no offense and find someone else. I just wanted to offer you the same chance I was given because I believe that you are the one that I can entrust this power to. But it is your choice, young Midoriya. Izuku took a moment to ponder as he weighed the options before him. One for all, a quirk that was passed down from one hero to another, getting stronger as each generation cultivates it. That kind of power would surely help him along his path to be a hero. It would go against everything he had stood for. But at the same time, it was also everything he wanted to be. A quirk that was the same as his idol. Not only that, but All Might felt that he was worthy to inherit such a power. Him of all people. Initially, he had planned to continue his Haki training and become a hero without a quirk, to prove to everyone who ever doubted him wrong, that even someone without a quirk like him could become a hero. But on the other hand, he also considered what All Might had told him and what would happen if he was no longer around and how he was deemed worthy of becoming the next symbol of peace. There are no doubts that there would be many risks and problems that would come from inheriting this type of power. Villains that wanted his head, disasters he would be expected to avert, and lives that would be depending on him to save them with a smile. It was everything that he wanted to be a hero, and he doubted, for a moment, that he wouldn't be able to live up to such an expectation. But then he thought what a true hero would do. A true hero would take on this responsibility, this power that protected the weak and helpless and use it for good, to ease the burden of the man that had done so much for the world without complaint and reassured him that he would carry on his legacy and protect the order he created. He knew his answer. Yes, I'll do it. I'll inherit your quirk and become the next symbol of peace. All Might smiled. Thank you, young man. Meanwhile, my prefecture, Uraraka residence. Aako Uraraka sighed as she placed her school bag down and flopped herself on her bed. School had felt particularly long that day, and she was just glad that she could go home and relax. Of course, she still had her training to do, plus the study session she planned with Izuku later that night, but even she needed to relax every once in a while. She looked over to the side of her bed as she focused on a small picture frame that sat on the bedside table. The photo was that of a young Aako and a young Izuku as they both wore their training uniforms outside his grandfather's dojo. The photo was taken to commemorate the day the two had moved up to the next level of their training. She smiled as she looked at the smiling and the determined face of her childhood friend. Ever since she met him 7 years ago, her whole life had changed. Her family was becoming more well off, not enough to make them rich but enough to live more comfortably. She was taking her hero training more seriously, more than she did before, and she had managed to gain more control over her quirk thanks to his analysis and suggestions. She honestly never thought that all these would happen if she hadn't been saved by the green-haired wannabe hero. But whatever the case was, she was happy that they met that day. Oh, speaking of which, she looked at the clock on the wall. It's almost time for us to chat. She ruffled in her bag for her phone. Strange. Normally he would have called me first ... Must have got caught up watching a hero's work again. That Otaku, she chuckled and checked the news feed. Images of All Might appeared as he vanquished the Sludge villain. Today the famous #1 hero, All Might, successfully defeated a powerful villain near the Tatooine station in Musutafu. The villain, now identified as Sludge Man, was taken into custody shortly after and is being held at Tartarus. The news reporter said as she perked up at the area. Oh, something about All Might in his area. He would definitely be all over that. She watched the news. Several heroes were already in combat with the villain when he had taken a local middle schooler as a hostage, identified as Katsuki Bakugo, who possessed a powerful explosive-based quirk. The explosive fire and hostage situation made it difficult for the heroes to intervene. Explosive. That sounds like the boy Deku was talking about. Kaken, she thought to herself as she watched the news. For a time, it seemed that the heroes couldn't do anything until a bystander rushed out onto the scene. Bystander. She had a bad feeling in her stomach as she watched the news. Another local middle schooler apparently rushed onto the scene, despite the warnings of the pro-heroes. The images then showed a green-haired boy rushing past the crowd as Achako's eyes widened in shock. Deku-kun, she screeched as she watched him run. The middle schooler, now identified as fellow middle schooler Izuku Midoriya, rushed onto the scene and managed to physically harm the villain with an unidentified quirk. His actions were apparently enough to stop the hostage from choking until All Might saved the day. The official statements from the heroes at the scene have advised civilians not to interfere in ongoing hero work. But public opinion, however, praises the boy for his quick actions and note his promising career as a potential pro-hero. Achako stared at the screen as the footage showed the boy rushing into the heat of the battle and accessing his Haki. His attacks physically harming the villain as he pulled the boy halfway out and speaking his inspiring words. On the one hand, Achako felt an immense amount of both fear and pride for the boy as he rescued the teen, his actions and his words filling her with hope and pride that he would become a great hero like she knew he could be. She even felt proud when she knew that the boy he rescued was the same one that had given him the derogatory name until she changed it for him. It showed his true character and hero's heart. But on the other hand, back in Musutafu, Izuku had just accepted All Might's offer as the man nodded to his successor. All right, tomorrow is a Thursday and no doubt you will have school tomorrow. Give me a couple of days and by then I'll have sorted out a plan for you to inherit. A phone call ... is here. A phone call ... is here. Both stopped as they instantly reached for their phones. Both took a blinking look as Izuku embarrassingly held up his phone. Sorry, it's mine, he said as the man chuckled at the ringtone he chose, even though it was the same one he had. Yura-chan. He sounded surprised as he looked at the ID. Yura-chan. A childhood friend of mine. Her name's Achako Uraraka, but I just call her Yura-chan for short. Sorry, this will only take a minute, he explained as All Might nodded, and he answered. Hello, Dekunn. Both men flinched at the loud voice that sprung out of the speakers as the physical word of Deku went straight through his ears, while All Might clutched his heart and sputtered blood out of his mouth. Shit. Why are these kids trying to give me a heart attack? Deku-kun, I just saw you on the news. Are you okay? Did you get hurt? Are you hurt? What the heck happened over there? His ears still rung as the desperate sound of his childhood friend's concern continued to roll out of the speaker. She sounds concerned, All Might jested while cleaning his ear as Izuku nodded. You have no idea, he muttered before bringing his attention back to the phone. Yura-chan, yes, I'm okay. I was just on my way home when I got caught up in the incident. Nothing major and nothing I couldn't handle. Are you sure? Yes, I am perfectly fine. I'm just on my way home now. On the other end he could feel her narrow her eyes. So, you didn't get hurt? Not a single scratch. He flinched when his fingers brushed against the bandage under his eye and the ones placed on his arm as a precaution. Izuku. She stressed his name out as he doubly flinched at this. Although, she called me Izuku, not Deku. She only calls me that when I've messed up. All Might looked confused. How's not being called Deku a good thing? Well, I may have gotten a little scratched up, but I am completely fine. Nothing major and I had my Haki up. I was perfectly fine. Trust me, he tried to reassure her. But why did you run in like that? I know that he was one of your classmates, but why did you just rush in? What were you thinking? She asked as he sighed. It's because ... it's because it was my fault the villain was there in the first place. I got in the way of a hero's work and the villain escaped. And when I saw that Kaken was taken hostage, my body moved before I could think because it knew I had to do something to make it right. I knew it was risky and I knew that I should have just waited for another hero, but someone told me that a hero has to be willing to put his life on the line to save others. If I couldn't do that ... then I would have no right to try and be a hero. I'm sorry I made you worry. All Might smiled slightly behind him as he knew that this boy was the right choice to become his successor, an inheritor of One for All. On the other end, Achako sighed as she too had a small smile. It's okay, I should have known you'd do something like that. It's just a part of who you are. Deku-kun. He sighed in relief when she called him that. But that doesn't mean you can keep doing that kind of stuff. He flinched when her voice gained an annoyed and commanding tone. You're not a licensed hero yet, and I don't want you to do any unnecessarily reckless things until we're both pro-heroes, understand? He rapidly nodded his head even though she couldn't see him. Why yes, Yura-chan. I promise I won't do anything reckless until we're licensed. He responded stiffly as she nodded. Good, I'll call you later when you get home. We still have our study session on tonight. He nodded. I remember. I'll call you around 7, okay? Okay, bye Deku. Say hi to Inko-san for me. I will. She hung up as he sighed in relief. He turned to see All Might as he had a knowing grin on his face as the boy looked confused. What? Nothing. I'll text you the address later with where to meet up. He shook his head. Young love ... such a beautiful thing. He thought as they exchanged numbers and departed. The sun began to set as the wheels of fate turned in the path for Deku. The next symbol of peace was about to begin. Older junior high the next day. Unfortunately, that had to wait as Izuku still had school to attend to. After meeting All Might and having a panicking mother to deal with once he got him, All Might told him to meet him at Dagaba Beach on set so that they could plan his training to inherit his power. Apparently, even though he was involved with a villain incident the other day, he was still required to go to school, seeing as the incident took place on a Wednesday and not on a Friday, which allowed All Might to begin working on a plan for the young boy while he was attending school. But the major problem Izuku was worried about was his old childhood friend, Bakugo. The boy was furious with him the other day when he showed his Haki abilities on national TV due to the sudden appearance of All Might, and he saved Bakugo from being devoured by the Sludge villain. The boy himself had made it very clear that he was pissed that he hid his quirk from him for years. He feverishly believed that Deku had been hiding his quirk to make him look bad and steal his spotlight when that wasn't the case at all. He was worried what the boy in question would do once he saw him again. Afraid he may even try to pick a fight with him to prove whose quirk was the best. Aw man, I'm really not looking forward to this, Izuku moaned as he walked into the school. He instantly spotted Bakugo as the boy walked up behind him, steeling himself for whatever he was going to say. But to his surprise, the boy just ignored him and stormed his way towards the classroom, which left Izuku in a state of confusion that was unexpected. Brushing off the strange behavior from Bakugo, Izuku made his way to his class as he wondered what sort of plan All Might had for transferring his quirk, his mind still not able to fully process how it was even possible for a quirk to be transferred in the first place. But he digressed. At least he wasn't going to cause a scene at school, so there was a positive. The last thing I need is Kaken causing a scene. I could just have imagined how it would have gone. A scenario played in his head as the angry boy ran at him with explosions in his hands, doing massive damage to the school while crying out, Deku, you are a effing liar. I'm going to kill you. Which would then lead to massive property damage, followed by a lawsuit from the school that would put both their families into large amounts of debt and their hero careers in jeopardy. He would have to move out into the streets where he would have to sell his body just to get. You know what, I think All Might is right. I overthink things too much. He entered the classroom his side and placed his bag on the hook of his desk. As he sat in class, he noticed something odd, small whispers around him and curious glance coming from the other classmates. Normally this wouldn't bother him as he was used to being ignored by them. But this time they seemed to be actively directed at him. What the hell? He thought to himself as he noticed some of the guys in his class looking at him differently, while the girls seemed to glance blush and then turn away from him. Okay, that's not normal ... Well, for this school at least. Class went on as Izuku tried to concentrate on study, but he kept feeling eyes on the back of his head as he would notice one of the students look at him but turned away when he looked back. It was the strangest thing. Whenever a question was asked, he was the first one the teacher pointed to, and when he answered correctly, he was praised. When he had to take some paper to the teacher's office, some of the other students offered to help. Hell, even some of the other teachers even commented on him positively when he passed down the hall. It was around lunchtime when Izuku finally managed to figure out what was going on when he was sitting by himself. Excuse me. He looked up to see some of the girls from his class, the ones that usually avoided him like the plague, as they seemed to be smiling rather strangely at him. Can we sit with you? A girl with she asked as he raised an eyebrow. What? Can we sit with you? She giggled. You're from the same class as us after all. The girl with horns growing out of her head said as she stood with the others. I think it would be awesome if we all sat together. But you guys never wanted to sit next to me before, like ever. What brought this on? He asked as they seemed to blush and stare at his right arm. Well, because she never got to finish when one of the other students, a large guy with a flat top hairstyle, bulked up and slammed his hand on the lunchroom table, nearly cracking the thing with his brute strength. Luckily, Izuku managed to save his food before it was crushed. Now he could have easily avoided him, but honestly, he needed to know what the hell was going on. Hey, Midoriya, what the hell? You think you are top shit now because of yesterday? His large arms tightening the table as Izuku looked passively at the boy. Yesterday, with the slime guy. What does that have to do with anything? He asked as this seemed to piss him off more. That's it. I'm going to. Mr. Kaido. They turned to see a teacher as he stood in front of them. You wouldn't happen to be picking on one of your fellow classmates now, or using your quirk during school hours, would you? he asked as he glared at the boy. The boy flinched as he put the boy back down. And no sir, we're just discussing things ... That's all he said before he turned around and left with his posse. I'm terribly sorry about that, young man. Rest assured that student won't be bothering you again, the teacher said as he smiled at Izuku. This creeped him out as he had known this teacher for a long time and was perplexed on why he would bother to help him now when he never had on the past. Thank you. It's no problem. My student's safety is one of my top priorities after all, especially one that has such a promising hero career. He wrings his hands together and smiled. I must admit though it was a shock to see one of my own students being involved with that villain incident the other day. But I was even more surprised that you possess such a powerful quirk. It truly was amazing. ... So that's what it was. He realized now that's why everyone around him was treating him differently. Everyone had seen the incident last night on the news and how he managed to injure the villain. They had made the mistake in thinking that his armament Haki was his own quirk. Now because of it, they were treating him like he was one of them. Like the past 10 years of bullying and isolation were nothing but a little mistake that could be swept under the rug. It honestly made him sick to his stomach. He got up from the table, ignoring the man, as he decided to go eat somewhere else. The teacher tried to call out to him, but by the time he turned around the corner, he was already gone. Rooftop. Izuku sat on the roof of the school as he looked up to all the passing clouds above him, his mind wandering back to the last 10 years of his life and how just one day had seemed to change that. In the past, he had been ignored, bullied and rejected from all forms of social interaction. He didn't mind so long as he had his training and his best friend that saw him as he truly was. So why did he hate it that everyone was treating him differently? He sighed as he looked up at the clouds that passed him by, the teacher's words still buzzing in his brain as he wondered what it would be like when he inherited All Might's quirk. How would people treat him when he actually did have a quirk? Would it be like it was with everyone being nice to him? Or would it be just like before he revealed his Haki abilities and he'd be the loser of the group? He honestly didn't know. A soft buzzing caught his attention as he pulled out his phone and found a text from Aako. Yura-chan, hey Deku, how are you? Deku, I'm fine, everyone is treating me weirdly here. Yura-chan, weird how? Deku, just different. People think I have a quirk now because of yesterday and are treating me different. I don't know how to respond. Yura-chan, well, I don't think you should worry about what they think. Remember Sensei's lessons. Don't care what other people think, just be the beast that you can be. Yura-chan, best that you can be. Because one day they will know the real you, the Deku who can do anything. He smiled softly at the encouraging words from his childhood friend as he felt his mood lighten from her words alone. He was so glad that he had a friend like her and that she knew just what to say to make him feel better. Yura-chan, school is so boring without you. I really wish we went to the same school, but only 10 more months until UA, and you better be in there. Deku, you bet, we promised after all. Yura-chan, oh, by the way. Your grandpa said he was coming up to visit in a couple weeks and said I could come too. My parents said it was okay and let me go so I could find a place to live when I get into UA. Isn't that great? Deku, absolutely. Can't wait. She left the message as he closed his phone, happy that the universe decided to lighten the mood with his best friend's encouragement and glad that he could talk to her about anything. That made him pause as he thought about All Might and One for All and the secret he would no doubt have to keep from everyone, especially her, and for some reason, he didn't like that. Aw man, I didn't think about that ... shit. He cursed as he looked up again at the clouds and wondered what he should do. The following Saturday, Dagaba Municipal Beach. Dagaba Municipal Beach was once a beautiful and lush beach that was the pride of the small area. However, due to the currents that picked up rapid amounts of trash from the coastline, it soon became a large junkyard, where illegal dumping became regular. This was the location that All Might had texted him as he waited for the man in the parking lot. But as he waited, his mind was still on the secret he would have to keep from his best friend and knew he had to talk to All Might about it. Ah, there you are, young Midoriya. Glad to see you are early. He turned to see the skinny version of his idol as he waved in his overly large coat. Well, you told me to be here by 5 AM, so I decided to get here a little early. I'm guessing my training has something to do with the garbage here, he asked as he nodded and turned to the rubbish. Correct. The reason I brought you here was so that we can begin training your body to withstand the power of One for All. Train my body, withstand. What do you mean by that? He asked as All Might held up a finger. You see, One for All is unlike any quirk known to mankind. It is a culmination and crystallization of 8 other people that have used and added onto this power for generations. A normal body that suddenly inherited this kind of power won't be able to handle the strain. A mental image appeared to him as a silhouette of Izuku's body was ripped apart. An untrained body would be ripped apart and your limbs would more than likely explode off your body. My limbs would what? One for All is a powerful quirk. If you're not ready, it can kill you, he told the boy as he gulped. But, the man said as he recalled the incident 2 days ago. You told me that you spent 10 years training your body, correct? he asked as the boy nodded. Can you do me a favor and take off your shirt? You know that's not something a grown adult should say to a minor, right? All Might coughed up blood as he laughed. I guess you're right. He wiped the blood off his lips as he looked seriously at the boy. But seriously, I need to see if your body is already suitable to handle one for all. He nodded as he removed his tracksuit shirt and revealed his upper body, still clad in a skin-tight t-shirt, as it showed off the years of training he spent to attain Haki. Not bad. He observed the body and lifted up one of his arms. A lot sturdier than I thought it would be. Well, this will make it a lot easier for you to inherit my quirk. You may even be able to receive it right away, he said as Izuku gasped a little in awe. Really, just like that? When I inherited one for all, my body was a lot sturdier that it made it easier for me to use it. When I first met you, I assumed you were one of those fanboys that didn't do a lot of exercises and would have a weak, lanky body. No offense, none taken, he waved it off. Anyway, seeing that you have a much sturdier body, you should be able to take one for all now. Not what I had planned, but never look a gift horse in the mouth. We can still use this space for training, but at least now you'll have a better grasp on it. So, he buffed up. Let's skip right to the award ceremony then. He reached for one of his hairs when Izuku raised a hand. Wait a minute. He stopped as he looked at the boy. There's something that's been bugging me. You said you could give me your quirk, but you never really explained how that works or what will happen to you. You said that 7 other people have had this power, but if that's the case, then where are they now and what happened to them? What will happen to you when you give me your power? What are you hiding? He asked as All Might stiffened a little. To be truthful, he hadn't expected the boy to question the transfer process of one for all, or what it would mean for him, and he dreaded telling him the origin of it as he didn't want to let the boy know of him not yet anyway. But from what he could guess, the boy wasn't going to let it go so easily as reporters trying to figure out his powers. He seemed too determined to just let it slide. Not to mention it wouldn't do the kid good to hide stuff from him. The least he could do was tell him what would happen afterwards. He sighed before shifting back to his skinny form. Well, for one thing, the previous users are all dead, and it had nothing to do with the transfer, I can assure you. But the normal process of transferring this quirk is that the previous user will begin to lose one for all. Which means when I give this to you, I will begin to lose my power, and I will no longer be able to be a hero. Izuku gasped at this as he stared at the man. He couldn't believe what he just heard. All Might, giving him his powers, would effectively end his career. He would be directly responsible for the end of the greatest hero this world would ever know. He would be the one that ended the era of All Might. Why, you've got to be kidding me. You're going to lose your powers if you give me your quirk. Why the hell would you try to keep this from me? How the hell could you expect me to be okay with this? I can't accept your power knowing that. All Might shook his head as he pointed at the boy. Young man, I was going to lose my powers eventually when I found my successor. Whether it was you or someone else, the transfer of one for all would happen. There's no getting around that. And I can't keep doing this forever. I'm on borrowed time as it is. Point is that one way or another I will no longer be the symbol of peace, which is why I need you to take this power and become the next one. Izuku shook his head as he could not believe this. How long until you lose your powers? The man sighed as he held up his fingers and counted. If I'm careful and not overexert myself, I could last maybe a year, 2 if I'm lucky. But when I give this to you, my powers will begin to dip daily. Knowing that you have a stronger body means that it will start to drop soon. But at least this way you'll be able to master it more before you get into UA. That is the school you're applying for, right? Despite this, he nodded. Well, UA is not the easiest school to get into. And you'll be going up against those that have had years of practice with their quirks. Your abilities may give you an edge, but when it comes to one for all, you'll need all the advantage you can get. Izuku shook his head as he gripped his fist. But I can't do that, knowing that you'll lose your powers. I can't be responsible for your end. I can't. The pro hero looked at the boy before he placed a hand on his shoulder. Young Midoriya ... do not feel bad about this. One or another, this was always going to happen. At least I know that I'll be giving my quirk to a truly worthy successor. You've already shown me your heroic heart and your utter determination. I know you'll be able to do this. Izuku listened as he shook his head and looked out onto the ocean. The large piles of garbage blocking the rising sun as it began to peek over the edges of the pile. He looked down at his hand as he processed everything he was told and gripped it tight. All Might, he said as he turned to the man. I will take your power, but can we at least hold it off for a bit? Just until I feel like I'm ready to take this power from you. I don't want to be the reason you can't be a hero anymore. To do that would not be very heroic of me. I'm sorry. A tear fell down his face as he felt he was disappointing the man who only looked at the boy and smiled. Okay, I can see that this was a lot for you to process and I apologize. I shouldn't have been so hasty giving you my powers. So, we'll make a deal. We'll hold off giving you one for all, but only for 6 months. I at least want you to have a firmer grasp of it before the UA entrance exam. He wiped the tear from his face as he pointed. Make it 7. He chuckled a little at this. Deal. They both shook their hands as the man coughed. Well then, seeing as you won't be taking in my powers just yet and factoring in your body, I'll have to edit my plans for you. Plans? The man smirked as he bulked up and pulled out a sheet of paper. This, my aim to pass, American Dream Plan. He slapped the paper as he read over the plan. Whoa, you really planned everything ... even when I sleep? I'm not going to lie to you, boy. This plan is not for the faint of heart. It will be grueling and... This doesn't seem too hard. Yeah, I think this can work. All Might blinked as he stared at the boy. Huh, what do you mean this isn't hard? Izuku smiled as he shook his head. Sorry, I didn't mean to insult your work, but ... this kind of stuff I did when I was a kid. My grandfather used to put me through all kinds of training in order to get me to awaken my Haki. Back when I was 5, he once threw me down a bottomless ravine and ordered me to climb back up. A small Izuku could be seen screaming as he fell down the ravine. And then there was that time he threw me into the forest for a whole night to see if I could survive. A small Izuku was thrown into the forest screaming as angry eyes glared from the darkness. And that one time he tied balloons around me and sent me into the sky until I thought of a way to get back down. Once again, a screaming child Izuku could be seen floating up into the air as several balloons were tied around his waist. But honestly, it wasn't that bad. It definitely helped me get stronger and allowed me to think of new and inventive ways to survive. Honestly, the stuff you wanted me to do seems like a walk in the park compared to that. He laughed with a bright smile. All Might just looked on in shock as he stared at the boy like he grew a second head. Kid ... Any one of those situations could be misinterpreted as child abuse, he thought as he stared at the boy. Anyway, sounds like I need to edit this plan and come up with a new one, factoring in both your abilities and your body. But the main point is for you to clean this beach. He gestured to the large piles before he grabbed the top of a fridge. Think of it as the starting point for your career as a hero, by helping the community. Back in the day, heroes used to do things like this before it all became about popularity and fame. This will remind you about the roots of hero work and why it must never be forgotten. He smashed the fridge flat as the sun shone behind him. Izuku stared in awe before he nodded and slammed his fists together as one arm was coated in Haki. All right, let's do it, sensei, he proclaimed as the man nodded, and they began to train and prepare for the day that Izuku would inherit One for All and start his path on becoming the next symbol of peace. However, he knew that eventually he would have to talk to the man about his best friend and the secret he had to share with her. He just hoped he would understand. Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.